Good evening and welcome to the joint special meeting of the Board of the Folsom Cordova Unified School District, the City Council of the City of Rancho Cordova, and the City Council of the City of Folsom, called to discuss the process of district reorganization and a feasibility study report. This meeting is called to order at 6:03 p.m. on June 8th, 2023. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I have a broadcast statement I need to read. A broadcast and recording is being made at the direction of the board, and the broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. Because the district is hosting this meeting, I will be serving as chairperson during the meeting tonight. We will begin by taking roll call, but first I want to say that we appreciate and support stakeholder input at our meetings. Engagement by members of the public in civic matters is a cornerstone of our democracy. Everyone should have a chance to express their opinions within the guidelines the board has established for its meetings so that we are able to conduct the meeting effectively and efficiently. This meeting has been called as a special joint meeting of these legislative bodies. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54956, public comment will be limited to the item on the agenda. Consistent with district practices for board meetings, individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda item. Students will be allowed 4 minutes. This next part we may not adhere to, but let me just read it. In the event that there are more than 15 anticipated speakers, the board may limit individual speakers to 2 minutes each and the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes, or the time necessary for 25 speakers to address the board, whichever is greater. Members of the public will not be permitted to yield their speaking time to another member of the public. Individuals wishing to offer public comment should submit a public comment card to the board secretary and wait to be recognized by the chairperson. Given the importance of this topic, I will say I don't think we're going to limit speakers, so anybody who wants to speak will have an opportunity to speak. Until it is your turn to speak, or if you are here to observe the meeting, please refrain from any behavior that prevents others from participating in the meeting or that disrupts our ability to conduct the business of these legislative bodies. This includes any conduct that prevents members of the legislative bodies, staff, or persons making public comment from speaking. We also ask that when you are called upon, you address only the legislative bodies. While we assume that members of the public intend to participate in the meeting in a civil manner, while legitimate criticism of elected officials is protected speech, we will not tolerate any threats of violence made to these legislative bodies, staff, or other members of the public. All written comments submitted by 3 p.m. today to the board and the city councils have been read. Per the Brown Act, the board is not allowed to enter into two-way discussions on any matter not on the agenda. All right, that takes us to roll call. At this time, I would like to start roll call for all legislative bodies and establish that a quorum of each body is present and acknowledge the board and city councils receive all electronic comments submitted as it pertains to today's agenda. Superintendent, will you take the roll call for the Folsom Cordova Board of Education?
Yes, President Reed.
Here.
Ms. Perez.
Here.
Ms. Srivastava.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Hui.
Here.
Ms. Larrett.
Here.
Ms. Lofthouse.
Here.
And Mr. Reed. All are accounted for. Thank you.
For the City of Rancho Cordova, City Clerk Stacy Leitner, will you please take the roll?
Here.
I think it used to be on. The other way around.
Here, you can take mine.
No.
Councilmember Gatewood.
Here.
Potty.
Here.
Here.
Councilmember Terry is absent.
All right, thank you. And for the city of Folsom, would City Clerk Lydia Kanapaka please take the roll?
Councilmember Sarah Aquino.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Kozlowski. Here. Councilmember Anna Rohrbaugh.
Here.
Vice Mayor YK Chalam-Cherla.
Here.
And Mayor Rosario Rodriguez is absent.
All right, adoption of the agenda. Folsom Cordova, for the Folsom Cordova Board of Education Superintendent, will you take roll for the agenda?
Do we need a motion on that?
Yeah, is there a motion?
I'll move it.
Motion by Board Member Clark, is there a second? Second. Well, actually, we're going to do each separately. Yeah.
I'll second.
All right. Second by Board Member Lofthouse. Superintendent, take the roll.
Yes, Ms. Perez,
Aye.
Ms. Shrivasta.
Aye.
Mr. Clark.
Aye.
Mr. Hui.
Aye.
Ms. Larrett.
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse.
Aye.
Mr. Reed.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, and then for the city of Rancho Cordova, Clerk Leitner.
Yes. Yes. Aye.
All right, and then for the city of Folsom, how do you pronounce your last name? I want to pronounce it.
Apka.
Kanapka. Would Clerk Kanapka please take the roll?
I'll move adoption of the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Council members Aquino.
Yes.
Kozlowski.
Yes.
Rohrbaugh. Yes. Chalam-Cherla.
Yes.
And Rosario Rodriguez is absent. Thank you.
All right. That takes us to agenda item 3, introduction of guests. I would like to take a moment to formally welcome the city councils from the city of Rancho Cordova and Folsom to this joint meeting with the Folsom Cordova Unified School Board. This is the first time that such a meeting of this nature has occurred. I want to start with a few brief opening remarks about tonight's meeting. First, a brief background on how this meeting came about. In January of this year, 2 FCUSD school board members, one from Rancho Cordova and one from Folsom, requested that the district explore the feasibility and process of splitting the school district into 2 separate districts based upon the communities of Rancho Cordova and Folsom. This request resulted in an informational presentation at our March 23rd board meeting. The reason for this extraordinary meeting tonight is out of a recognition that this is a sensitive topic and one of great importance to both cities. After all, what is more important than the public education of our children? As many individuals in this room already know, this is not the first time this issue has come before the district. The board felt that a discussion of this nature deserved the unusual request for a joint public meeting of both city councils with the board. We want and need to know the thoughts and perspectives of the leadership and residents of both cities. I think it is safe to say that the board has little desire to go down a path which is not supported by both cities. The presentation we will have tonight will be very similar to the presentation the board received at its March 23rd meeting. This is an opportunity to learn about the process of separating a school district, to ask questions, and to hear from the public. At the end of the meeting, we hope to see if there is a general consensus as to whether the board should move forward with a formal independent study done by an outside consultant to identify the pros and cons of such an action. I want to make clear that no action will be taken this evening to separate the district. And if such an action were to occur in the future, it would only be taken after significant due diligence and consultation with the leadership and residents of both cities. I would now like to invite opening remarks from Rancho Cordova Mayor Linda Budge, to be followed by opening remarks from Folsom Vice Mayor YK Chalam-Cherla. Mayor Budge.
It's funny to have a red light if it's on. So, thank you, David. Yes, If you will look at this map up here, which I happen to have gotten from Sacramento County ages ago, this shows what the school districts in this county look like before the unifications in the 1950s. There's a huge amount of history there, and it's really just quite fascinating to see where people were at that point in time. Obviously, as David said, this is not the first time that this has been discussed, and it certainly, as many people in the room here tonight know, is not the first time that it's actually been voted on. We had votes back in the late 90s to decide whether or not to split the school districts. But in the late 90s, prior to the incorporation of Rancho Cordova, and prior to the remarkable growth that began in the city of Folsom, during the decade of the 90s, we were totally different places. And quite frankly, we also had different compositions in our schools. In our leadership class in Rancho Cordova, we have tracked the introduction of all of the cultures that have come to live with us just here in Rancho Cordova. The Vietnamese in the 70s and the 80s, and then the people fleeing the breakup of the Soviet Union in the 90s, and then, of course, the Syrians and the Afghans. And today, we have whole schools, as probably you all know, in Rancho Cordova, where the majority language is Spanish. Several of us have all traveled around to the graduations this year and had a really good time. Mills Junior High is 75% Hispanic. The population at Mitchell is much more diverse, but still, and then when you get to Cordova High, which is really kind of our polyglot conglomeration, we again are more diverse. But it's a different population that we're serving today. It's a different population than we had in our cities or even our parts of the county back in the 90s. And so this is a discussion that is certainly very timely. And we need to make sure that we're all on the same page. And we really appreciate the school district embarking on this journey and asking us to go along.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Shalom Sherrill.
Chair Reed, thank you so much for calling. Okay, I can go a little far. Very efficient mics, technology is good. Mayor Budge.
I think it's on.
It's on.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Mayor Budge, I have a green here, so.
Green.
Mayor Budge, you explained very well, so I'm going to echo whatever you have covered here. And more importantly, it's an exploratory. Let's explore the feasibility of a reorganization, which is true. I think, last time it happened is 2000, early 2000. I think that time, I don't know whether Rancho Cordova was city, not there when the voting is coming. This is a right movement. And at the same time, in last 20 years, I can speak for Folsom, it was 55,000 residents in 2000. Now it is 85,000. We added 30,000 more. And as we look at, based on the growth going on in Folsom, in next 20 years, we are going to add another 30,000 people. That's the plan if all goes well. So this is the right timing, to just have open discussions. And I want to, thank Jennifer and Tim for reaching out to us ahead and sharing some information. We are not making any decisions here. It is more of exploratory. When the two cities side representing, I felt so happy and having a nice coffee with them and talking. So we are here to do the right thing, and especially for the residents and who are watching, out there on live. So we'll make sure we will listen to you. That's our first thing, and then go from there. With that, once again, Chair, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to the agenda item discussion. Superintendent, will you introduce the agenda item?
Yes, President Reed, and you did a great job introducing the background on this topic, so I won't repeat the words that you stated so well. But joining us this evening is our consultant from School Services of California, Ms. Brianna Garcia, who will be giving us a background on how a reorganization works, what the criteria are that need to be met. And I also want to recognize Mr. Sean Martin, our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, who helped put together the information for this agenda item as well as the history. So we have a very rich history of our districts and this process that's been approached before in the past. So with that, I want to welcome Ms. Garcia and turn it over to you. Welcome, Brianna.
Thank you. Thank you, board members and city council members. I am here hopefully to just provide you with some information about how this process typically works, what some of the options are, and then I'm available to answer any questions that I might be able to for you. So this was the presentation, as was mentioned before, that I provided to the school board back on March 23rd. And we're using the same presentation, but I am going to tailor it a little bit just to focus on the areas that are most relevant to these bodies that are discussing this matter this evening. There we go. So the education code is very clear and lays out a very specific process or different processes for the potential district reorganization. It lists a district reorganization. There are a number of different types, but what this process does is define the various types of district reorganizations that are available to school districts. It lays out the various processes depending on which path is taken by the body or the individuals that are putting forward the district reorganization. It specifies all the duties and responsibilities of the county committee on district reorganization, which is the committee at the county office that's actually going to hear the petition or the resolution to move forward any petition for district reorganization, approving it or disapproving it before it may go to the State Board of Education for their consideration and then to the voters after that. There are timelines with regards to public hearings, your governing board actions, votes, etc. Those are all laid out there. It talks about specific employee rights, especially in situations such as this, where a district would be actually splitting apart, and what would happen with staff. And it also very clearly states what the criteria is that the State Board of Education has to use in order to evaluate whether or not to approve a district reorganization. And these criteria, with one exception, are the same that the county committee also needs to review if it's going to approve a district reorganization and moving that forward. So there are 4 basic types of district reorganization. I'm going to focus you on the bottom left-hand side of the slide, the formation of new school districts or a unification. This is typically a unification either with elementary and high school districts that want to unify into a unified school district, or as the case here in Folsom Cordova Unified, where you have an existing unified school district that wants to split into 2 or more parts. And so as I move forward, we'll be looking at that formation of new school districts, which is called a unification. The law requires that any individual or group or elective body that is going to be putting forward a district reorganization provide a petition or a resolution, and it has to cover 4 items. The first one is a description of the territory that's going to be covered by that reorganization, the list of school districts that would be affected, the reasons for the proposed organization, and a designation of chief petitioners, basically who's putting that forward. This was mostly written in mind with members of the community sometimes that put these forwards, and so they're asking for 3 chief petitioners, but in this case so far it would likely be one of the governing bodies, and so it would be a resolution or a petition submitted by you and signed by the governing bodies. So there are really 2 types of petitions that would apply in this specific instance. There is what we call a 25% petition and then a 10% petition. In this case, the 25% petition is the one that if the school board were to be moving forward with this initiative, the school board would put forward, because this one allows for the governing body, a majority member of the governing bodies of affected districts, in this case Rancho Cordova, to put forward a petition for the unification, or in this case the split of an existing district. It's called a 25% petition because it also allows for 25% of registered voters who are in the territory to actually also propose reorganization of a district. On the other side, the 10% petition, 10% because it requires just 10% of registered voters of an entire district to put it forward, or a resolution by the majority of the members of city councils, other county boards, or other special districts. And so again, depending on who may or may not put this forward, if it were to move forward to that point, the 25% petition would be utilized by the school board, while the 10% petition process would be utilized by either city council if it were that's who would put the resolution forward to move this process along. So the next couple of slides are actually flowcharts that are included in the California Department of Education's School District Organization Handbook. It is a very lengthy document that lays out all of the procedures for the various types of petitions, but they do include these flowcharts that give you at least an overview of what the process might look like. So for the 25% petition, which would be the one under which the school district might move forward this initiative, it requires a resolution or the petition by the governing board, by the majority of the governing board to sign that. The document would be submitted to the county superintendent of schools, who would review it and ensure it has all of the elements that are required by law. And then the county superintendent would forward that to the County Committee on District Reorganization and to the State Board of Education. Once the county committee receives that petition, they are required to hold a public hearing. This public hearing happens in the affected areas, and it really is to get feedback, information from the community with regards to their thoughts about the petition. After that initial public hearing, the county committee then will hold a second hearing, and this hearing is actually to consider the merits of the petition. This is when they would typically study the 9 criteria, which is what I'm going to talk to you about in a couple of slides. And these are the criteria that are required by law to be reviewed and to be met if a petition is going to be approved and move forward in the process. And so the petition or the process gives 120 days for the county committee to receive that information and hold yet another public hearing to determine whether or not they're going to approve or disapprove that petition. If they approve the petition, it moves forward to the State Board of Education, and then that process kind of starts over again. The state board is going to hold a public hearing. Their staff is actually going to also do their own analysis of those same 9 criteria, and then the board will determine whether or not they are going to approve or disapprove the petition. If they approve the petition, they inform the county superintendent of schools, and the county superintendent of schools calls an election. In a lot of instances, there's the county superintendent or even the county committee and or the State Board of Education determines where the election is going to be held. In this case, you're talking about an entire district splitting, so I imagine it would be the boundaries of the school district, and that election would be held to determine whether or not the voters would support the dissolution of the school district or the split of the school districts. The process under which the city councils would move a petition forward is a little bit different, though overarching, it's the same general steps with regard to going to the county and then going to the State Board of Education. In this case, the city councils would submit a resolution with regards to the petition. A public hearing is held, and at this public hearing, the county committee basically is determining whether or not they are going to grant or deny the petition. So it's a first blush of whether or not they deem that this should move forward. If they decide that they are not going to grant the petition, that they are denying it, then the process effectively stops there. If the county committee determines that they are going to grant the petition, then they adopt a tentative recommendation, and then they go through that longer process of holding a public hearing in the affected areas, reviewing the 9 criteria to determine whether or not they've been met or not met, and then they make a final recommendation as to whether or not they're actually going to approve the petition and move it forward. That gets submitted to the state board. The state board has their public hearing, does their analysis, makes the determination whether or not they're going to approve or disapprove, and then it's back to the voters. I will note that while the law calls for a review of the criteria after that first public hearing, a lot of county offices and county committees do actually do that report before that first public hearing, just because it provides them with the most information possible. It's kind of hard to make a decision based on, you gave me a piece of paper and it says yes or no and let's move forward or not. So typically they will do that 9 criteria study at the beginning of that process so that they can make an informed decision as to whether or not to move the petition forward. There is, for that 25% petition that might be submitted by the school board, there is a pathway to having the petition approved and going before the voters before going to the state board, but there are certain criteria that have to be met in order for that to happen. And so this slide is there for your information, but it's typically, this is a newer process that was put into law over the last several years by the state, just trying to slow down a little bit of the backlog. But I will note that if the county committee denies the petition, it goes to the state board automatically for their review. And this also allows the process for, if the petition is approved, for an appeal of the state board if one party disagrees with whatever the decision was of the state, of the county committee. So there are 9 statutory criteria that have to be met in order for a petition to move forward. This is just a slide that shows you an overview of those 9s, and on the next couple of slides, I'll walk you through what those are quickly. So the first one is an adequate number of pupils. Any reorganized district has to meet a certain amount of student enrollment. For a unified district, you have to have at least 1,501 students. So each of the 2 districts, if they were to split, each has to have a minimum of 1,501 students. So that criteria is very objective, and it's very easy to determine whether that number meets. The second criteria is community identity, and this is that the school districts are organized based on a substantial community identity. So really looking at what are the community centers, what are the geographic and topographic information with regards to the 2 school districts. They are trying to make sure that you have 2 communities that are cohesive, in this case on their own, as you're moving forward. And so the determination then looking at that criteria would be whether or not it has been substantially met or not. The third criteria is equitable division of property and facilities. This is the idea that the property that is owned by the school district is going to be equally distributed amongst the 2 school districts. So really we'd be looking at from the physical buildings and land that's owned by the school districts to the monies that are being held in the general fund, bond funds, etc., how all of those would be equally divided amongst the school districts. If there is property that is held centrally, typically school buses aren't in one community or another, they're at the district office and they're deployed. All of those types of property or facilities have to be dealt with, and the idea here is there a way to actually equitably divide that information. When we do the study, we look at those items and determine how they could be, but really ultimately, if a petition moves forward and is approved, then that's something that the districts typically are negotiating and figuring out how that's going to be split. So that's something that the district will have to figure out if it goes to the voters and if this is actually approved and the split happens. The fourth criteria is discrimination segregation. The state wants to ensure that a reorganization is going to preserve the affected district's ability to educate students in an integrated environment, and that there's not going to promote racial or ethnic discrimination. This one, as with all of them, but this one brings it to bear the most. When we're doing an analysis, we're really looking at what does a district look like right now as it is, and then you do a scenario of the 2 districts as if they were split, and what do they look like, and then basically doing a before and after. It's you're trying to see what the impacts are of the reorganization on the districts. And so in this case, it really is looking at the demographics of the district as it is currently and what they would look like at the 2 districts, whether in order to determine whether or not there would be any discrimination or segregation that would be caused because of the reorganization. Criteria 5 is no substantial increase in state costs. The idea here is that the state doesn't want to incur a substantial increase in costs because of the district split. So we'd be looking at The school districts are funded on the local control funding formula, and there's a certain amount to which the district is entitled to based on the number of students and the demographics of its students. And so we would do that hypothetical analysis of the two districts after the fact and see basically in totality, is there a large increase in cost that the state is going to have to incur because the two districts are splitting, or because the one district is splitting into two. Criteria 6, sound educational program. Obviously, the reason school districts are here is to educate students. And you want to make sure that because of the reorganization, that the students aren't going to end up in a situation where their educational programs and their education in general is going to be significantly disrupted, that there are programs and services that they're receiving now that wouldn't be available to them with regards to, or once the district is split. And so those are the items that we'd be looking at. We typically are looking at the California School Dashboard, which is the metrics that the state board has put together when looking at school districts. We'd be looking at the test scores, looking at the programs that are being offered by the district now, and what might be available to the two separate districts were the district to split, and trying to ensure that it wouldn't harm the students' educational attainment. Criteria number 7 is no substantial increase to school facilities costs. This is similar to just the costs to the state. The real idea here, or what we're looking for, is do each of the two districts, as they would be split, have sufficient facilities in order to house the students that they're going to be educating? And if they don't, what would be the cost? Is there a cost to ensuring that there's adequate facilities in both locations in order to meet that? And if there's an increase in cost because you have to build new schools to accommodate students, etc., that's taken into consideration by the state as well. Criteria 9 is increased property values. This one is relatively simple. They want to make sure that the reason that the reorganization is not being put forward is to increase property values. This usually you see more when you have a new development coming into town, a developer who wants to have their new development in one area versus another for various reasons. And so this is simply looking at that stated fact, whether or not that's the purpose for the split in the two school districts. And then lastly is the effect on the fiscal status and management of the district. You want to be certain that you have a district that's in fiscally sound, and that the splitting of that district into two isn't going to result in two districts that are in a financially precarious position. And so we would be looking again at that local control funding formula, looking at the funds that the district is receiving right now and how much they'd be receiving after the fact, and whether or not over the next several years they're going to be able to retain a healthy fund balance, meet the requirements of the state, be able to be a going concern, so that there's not, again, a negative impact on the students if a school district isn't able to, or ultimately the state, because the state doesn't allow school districts to just go under and go bankrupt. The state would have to step in with an emergency loan, and there's a lot that's attached to that you want to avoid at all costs. And so we want to look at that and make sure that the two school districts that remain would be a going concern after the reorganization were to happen. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions any of you might have. That's just a broad overview of how that process works. I will note that the process is a lengthy one. This is not something that happens in 30 days. The process just locally on its own is a process that's going to take anywhere from probably about 6 months or so. And then when it goes to the state, I have seen that part going to the state to take somewhere upwards of 3 to 4 years. So this is definitely not something that's going to happen overnight.
Superintendent, do we want to have the second presentation by Sean Martin before we get into the questions?
Mr. Martin, were you going to go into the presentation of the history or just have it as a backup document? Yeah, so it's more information.
It's more information, okay.
Yes.
All right. Then we're going to take questions in groups. The first group will be the city of Rancho Cordova. So I'll hand it over to Linda Budge to recognize.
Okay. Okay, questions or comments, guys? Garrett?
how do they rate that?
There are different items that are listed in that California School Handbook with regards to where the community centers are, where the social centers are within a community. If there are geographic impediments, sometimes you'll find that you have school districts, I'm making it up, that have, a mountain range in between. You want to make sure that there's the ability for it to actually be a community center. And so it lists all of those in there.
So would it take into account like our community center that we just built and say like that's the hub where the kids are going?
That could be part of it.
Or just the overall identity of the two cities? That's
Correct.
the ones we're getting ready to, like, the separation is happening.
Correct.
That's the only question.
Thank you.
Siri.
So on the 9 criteria that you do have, and you say they have to be met, so what happens if we don't meet them? Can we still proceed?
So according to the law, all 9 have to be met in order for you to proceed with a district reorganization.
Thanks.
David.
I saw the criteria there about property values. Presumably,
Sorry, thank you.
presumably a school split could have a remarkable impact on property values on each end of the district. Can you describe a little more
It could.
that impact would be?
It could potentially have an impact, but the point in that criteria is that that shouldn't be the reason for the split or for whatever the reorganization is.
So the fact that it exists doesn't matter, but if that is a motivation, that would matter.
Correct.
Okay, I appreciate that clarity. There's also a role for potentially a city council to take in initiating this.
A city council could initiate a petition, yes.
Yeah, as we've seen in a briefing we received as well. Is there anything that would mark that as unusual in the process? Or is that common in the process as you've seen it?
I've actually, in the last couple of years, done 2 of them that were initiated by city council, so it's not unusual.
The creation of a new district, dissolution of a current, or split, however.
Or
you wanna-
territory transfer. There's different types of district reorganizations, but they have
Sure.
been put forward by city councils in the past.
Okay. That's it for now. Thank you.
So just to follow up on Garrett's question, it strikes me that they're not talking about a physical building at the center of a community, like an old town square. They're really talking about communities of commonality, similar to LAFCO criteria. They're looking for regions that are used to having their own identity, as opposed to the fact that, okay, now we've got a youth center, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's just having that physical representation of that community as part of it, but that's certainly not, if there's no physical building there, then that means there's not a community, no.
No. And the other thing, I'm not understanding your answer to Siri's question. It's my understanding that not all 9 of those criteria actually have to be met.
According to the law and what's written in code, it says that all 9 have to be substantially met. I do know that there have been instances where when all 9 are met, the county committee has moved the petition forward. But according to what it says in law, all 9 have to be met.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, David.
Okay, we'll go over to the city of Folsom. Vice Mayor Y.K. Shalom Shalera.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Sarah, let's go with it.
So when this effort has been attempted in the past, which of the 9 criteria were not met?
Oh, I know off the top of my head, it was the criteria for the discrimination and segregation. I don't know. Sean, do you know off the top of your head if there were others? Or you have the...
I don't have the one that was in the 90s, but in 2002, sections 4, 5, 6, and 9 were the ones that were considered not met by the Sacramento Committee, the County Reorganization Committee.
That's the only question I have right now. Thank you.
Anna?
You may have addressed this, but the only question I have, does the study tell us anything about how the bond would get reorganized?
We look at scenarios about how they could be divided between the two districts, but again, it's one of those things that ultimately, when that happens, that's a negotiation. But typically, they do it either on a per assessed value basis. Sometimes they do it on a per average daily attendance basis, depending on the number of students. So there are a couple of different scenarios that could be used in order to determine how that split should work.
And that would be explained in the study.
Yes.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay, back to the failure in 2002 for this to happen. The criteria 4, 5, and 6. I guess let me ask about 5 first. It uses a squishy word, substantial.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what is substantial in this context? Is it relative to what the school district's funding is currently? Is it relative to the state's overall funding for schools? Is it relative to a before or after situation in one place or the other? What does that criteria really mean?
It's definitely a before and after. There's no bright line. With a lot of these criteria, it's with the exception of number 1, where it's like, hey, you have to meet a certain threshold of students. That one's very cut and dry. The rest of them, there's a little bit subjectivity to them. And so it definitely is comparing a before and after. It's not a situation where I've done these studies before where a school district said, well, this district was going to have to build, 10 schools 30 years down the line anyway. But in the immediate term, because of the reorganization, it required the building of new schools, which meant that they had to spend those monies in the short term. And so it really is looking at where it is right now, what it would look like in the immediate aftermath of the reorganization. And it's a little bit of it depends. Without actually sitting down and looking at all the data, I can't say, oh, it's $5 or it's $2 million.
So it could be relative to facility costs, could be relative to operational expenses.
Well, number 5 is really about the operational costs and the cost to the state. So if it's going to, for example...
Well, those two funding pots come from different places,
Yep.
right? And the match funds that the state would have to provide for facilities in the example that you gave is one version of that story. The other version is that the LCFF, what is it?
LCFF, yeah.
LCFF. I guess my underlying question here is there something about the structure of the LCFF that would lead you to think that some substantial additional funding would come to one part or the other of a divided district?
It's possible. So the local control funding formula has 3 components. The first component is a base grant. It's amount provided depending on the grade level for each student, same across the board. There's a supplemental grant that's a 20% increase above the base grant for every student or the percentage of student that's considered an unduplicated pupil. And those are English learners, foster youth, and those that are eligible for free and reduced price meals. And it's called unduplicated because you might have a student that's all 3, but you only get to count them the one time. Then on top of that, there's a concentration grant, which is a 65% increase above that base grant for districts that have a concentration of those students. So over 55%, for each percentage over 55%, you get another 65% of that base grant. So if you have a district that has a high concentration or has a high UPP, they receive more money than a district that has a low UPP, even if they're the same grades and next to each other. So there is the possibility, and I haven't looked at the demographics, but if there is a large disparity between the 2 proposed school districts with regards to that concentration of students, that one could be receiving significantly more than the district is receiving right now. So in total, those 2 could actually be receiving more from the state than the district is receiving right now as a unified district.
So then would that, if that were the case, a 65% base grant increase, to my mind, would seem to be a substantial increase in state costs.
It just depends on the number of students that applies to.
Okay, all right. Okay, and then I guess my other question, and this one might be not easy to answer, the 2002 effort was found to be lacking on criterion number 4 as well.
Okay.
Is there some suspicion that that would still be the case or not be the case if we went forward now? I'm concerned about this one.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the data or the demographic breakdown of the district, and so I don't know if, especially between now and in 2002, so I can't tell you if there's a large difference. I don't know if anybody from the district can
All right. I don't
opine
have
on
any
that.
other process questions. Thank you.
That's right. Okay. Sean, just to quickly touch on, I know you're coming up for the history explanation. I have a similar questions as my colleague Kozlowski. You don't have to come right now when you get there, because if the county committee is turned down 20 years ago, and they're clearly saying 4, 5, 6, and 9, and they're also using substantially not met. How do you define that? After working so hard, this many people, this is just a beginning. Understanding that, deeper helps us.
Yeah.
Right? That's what my colleague is also asking. And you're right, I was going through some history. All 9 must be met before the state level they approve, especially number 5, if there is an increased cost, if we can define the merits for the students and the parents and the community, probably they're okay with a few $1 million. But not knowing that substantial, it's a concern right now. But that's not going to stop us because we are growing. That's number 1. So before we go quickly, your firm is doing any of these processes right now somewhere else, or?
The last one we did finished up about 4 or 5 months ago. But in my time with school services, I've been there for almost 10 years. I've probably done about 5 or 6 of them.
In 10 years, and success stories on that?
And
anything you can recollect how the success stories, how many been approved? And
I think of those, there was one petition by some homeowners, and that in that case, they were literally trying to transfer, their property to be with their neighbors, and I know that one got approved locally. There were 2 other ones that were sent to the state board. And again, that just takes time. Of one of those, only one of them has gone to the state board so far, and it was denied.
Yeah, the reason why I was asking, yes, we may have a right reason here, and both sides, want to do it. If the pulse of the state is consistently denying the applications, you know what? We got to know the root cause for those. It's important.
Yeah, and no, I don't think that there's a threat at the state to approve or not approve. It really depends on the merit of each one of the petitions. And I think as the mayor was noting, there are some counties that have moved forward petitions even when all 9 haven't been met. And so by the time it gets to the state, it gets denied.
Got it. Thank you. The one more, since it is out there, a sound educational program. And the 4th line says, will not disrupt significantly. So we know that right now. I don't know, superintendent can comment on that one. If we move forward, I think right now the programs are very separate between 2 sides of the schools.
Actually, the programs throughout the district are probably more consistent than you might think, because what we offer as a base program, we offer to all students in the district. What we offer for acceleration in the district, in both communities, we offer to all students that need acceleration. For those students that need intervention, and we call it tiered intervention, and the supports for literacy or math, we do that throughout the district. So there's adopted curriculum, there's adopted programs for, base instruction, and then supplemental instruction throughout the district. It just depends on the student needs, and we know with 21,000 students, our job is to meet our students' needs, all of them.
Right. Thank you, because that number 6 is also identified when they were denying in 2002. So that's why, what programs are already in place, we know that at high level. And, when we are going ahead, if we already know if that's one of the reasons we really can't do, then I'm trying to see, before we invest so much time, hash out some of those, I think the grass is green, at least from far, because it is 3 to 4 years. That's what you said.
Yeah, if it goes all the
Finally.
way to the state, yes.
Right?
Could take
Okay.
some time.
Yeah. Well, it's a last simple question. Who are the SEC? Is it the county supervisors part of that? I'm just asking if you know them.
You mean School Services of California, SSC, or?
Or county, I believe. That it goes to county first.
Oh, the County
before-
Committee on District Reorganization. So they are a body within the county committee. I don't know the specific members of that county committee.
I'm just curious on
Yeah.
that one, but thank you.
Every other one I've dealt with has a web page, and the committee members are listed, so you could probably look it up. It would be under the county's website.
And that would be the Sacramento County Office of Education.
Correct.
Yes, and we do have a member of our board that is a representative on that County Committee of Reorganization.
That's good. So we have a voice there. That's good. Good. Ms. Garcia, I think that's all I have right now. Mr. Tate, back to you.
Thank you. All right, we'll start over with the student board members. Board Member Shrivastava.
Thank you. Just two quick questions. So my first one, I was wondering if we do move forward with district reorganization, is there any way that the process or that the community is held accountable for continuing to fulfill the criteria? Like, let's say, we go forward with it and then 10 years down the road there's a problem. Is there any way that we remain accountable to the community?
I think they remain accountable by, the election of the board and et cetera, just like you have right now. There's nothing in the process that says this is all going to get turned around because you didn't do X, Y, or Z 10 years later.
Okay, thank you. And then another question, I was wondering, because the process takes so long, how do we account for changes in the community during the time of the process as well? I mean, while we may be fulfilling a criteria now, it could be that 3 years down the road we're not. So do you use current data, or how does that work?
So we'd be the study happens at the county committee level the first time, and then the state board also does their analysis. That's one of the reasons it takes a while to get this process, because it takes the state board a while. And so they'll use current information at whatever time they start that analysis. And so you'll still get another snapshot. So it's conceivable that you could look at it now and go, it's all makes sense. And then 3 years from now, when the state does it, they go, wait, there was a hiccup, or because they're looking at the data at that time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Board Member Perez.
Yeah, just one quick question. Thank you. I was just wondering if the split would impact our CTE programs already established in our schools.
It depends on how they move that process forward. That's part of what the conversation will have to be if it gets approved. The school board is going to have to, and this district is going to have to sit down and figure out what programs, what's being offered based on, the students of those two new school districts. A new school board is going to have to be elected for those two new school districts, and so they're going to have to make all of those decisions.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Board Member Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's dive into the concentrated grant funding. And that might be a Sean question of where do those funds actually go? Does it go into maybe hiring of teachers?
So the local control funding formula is clear that any of the supplemental and concentration grant dollars must be used to improve or increase services for those students that generated those dollars. And that's driven by the local control and accountability plan. And so the district has to come up with a plan that basically lays out how they're going to use those funds. So it's possible.
Nothing else, right? Nothing outside of what you just mentioned?
No. But that does provide the district with latitude depending on what they're looking at, whether it is teacher retention, whether it is, textbooks, or what other programs and services. But it has to be detailed in the local control and accountability plan.
Got it. Thank you. Also, let's say this thing does go to an election. Who pays for that? Is it the district that pays for it? Is it the culmination of the city and the district?
No, that one is a good question. That one I haven't checked into. I know that a CEQA study is required, which is the California Environmental Quality Act, and the district will be on the hook for paying for that, but I am not sure who pays for the election. I'll have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And then I know if it's split into two districts, obviously there's going to be a governance issue of elected officials. Is that at large, or will we have to hire a demographer to come in and kind of split the area up?
I think similar to how school districts are right now, there are some that are at large and there's some that are by district, and so that determination would have to be made.
Right. I'm just concerned of the trend that we're kind of going into now with us first and then the city of Folsom. I don't know. One day, maybe the city of Rancho Cordova. I mean, it's kind of circulating out there. I'm just wondering if that would happen. I mean, how is that going to be paid?
The law doesn't require that it be at large or by district. It just lays out the fact that 2 new boards are going to have to be elected. And it's usually in that same election or that same ballot that the district reorganization is moving forward.
Okay, I'm just like talking about the trend that's happening now. And if that happens, I can probably guarantee you that somebody somewhere will say, okay, well, we're going to, due to the Voter Rights Act, we're going to have to split you up into areas.
And in that case, yes, it would be on the district to hire the demographers, figure out how that split's going to happen, et cetera, for the 2 new school districts, if you decide to go in that direction.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
All right, Board Member Hui.
Yeah, thank you. All right, well, Councilmember Kozlowski used the word squishy. It does appear that a lot of these are pretty squishy. So just a few of them, maybe just actually one I'll probably ask about right now. We talked a little bit about criteria for discrimination and segregation. I realize that you've given us a brief snapshot here of probably of what the actual criteria is, but there's a couple words here where I'm curious about. One would be the reorganization will preserve each affected school district's ability to educate students in an integrated environment. It seems to me that that's saying as long as the school districts can continue to educate with the demographics that they have, that would be fulfilled, that first part of that? Am
I mean, there's some wiggle room. It's really, again, a comparison between where the district is now and what it might look like after. So if right now you are, 1% of every demographic across the board, and after the reorganization, it's, 80% here and only 1% there, that's one where there's going to be like, well, nope, you're not being able to maintain that. If that switch in demographic goes from 1% to 2% across the board, that's insignificant, and we wouldn't see that as an area of concern.
Okay, and maybe that goes to that second word, which is promote racial or ethnic discrimination or segregation. Certainly, if this happened, the districts would have different demographics. I don't know if just by making different demographics, would we say that that's promoting segregation? Do you have an understanding of exactly what is thought about in this criteria?
I think it depends on the magnitude. Again, if you're looking at a district that was, 1% white, 2% African American, 3% Hispanic, and the new district went up by, 2 or 3 percentage points, that probably wouldn't be an issue. But if you're splitting up the districts and you end up with one district that has all the white students and one district that has all the brown students, that's probably going to be frowned upon.
Okay, thank you. The only other question I think I'll ask right now is, we're talking about splitting up FCUSD as it is right now. If, let's say, the city of Rancho Cordova was interested in having their entire, every school within their city boundaries be part of that, a new district, that would encompass at least Elk Grove Unified School District, Sac City Unified, and FCUSD. What would that process look like to ask for something like that?
The process is the same. It's just the scope gets a little bit larger, because instead of just looking at what does Rancho Cordova or what does Folsom Cordova look like now as compared to these 2 new districts, it's what do these 4 or 5 school districts look right now, and then what would it look like after the fact. So it just increases the scope of what we're looking at. The analysis is not just one district, but it's looking at 4 or 5 of them.
Is that something that FCUSD could ask for? Or does that have to be driven by the city?
No, that's something that you could certainly ask for. It would be helpful to make sure that the other cities are at least on board with school districts are at least on board with the idea of doing an analysis and moving forward, because the information that's needed in order to conduct that analysis comes from the school districts, from financials to educational program to a lot of that information is actually data that we need from individual school districts. And so it would be helpful to at least have them saying, yes, we're at least okay with you looking at that and we'll cooperate with the information request.
But it wouldn't make a difference who it came from. They have the ability to cooperate however much they want to.
Correct.
Okay.
I will say that most of the studies that we do are done for the county committee, and so that usually smooths the path a little bit because it's the county asking for that cooperation and information, but yeah,
Okay.
it doesn't matter who requests it.
That's it for me.
Board Member Lorette?
Yeah, just one question on the criteria 5. I know that we're talking about substantial. If we proceed forward with the report's going to give us that information on what that cost is going to look like, correct? If
It's
that's
going to,
substantial.
yeah, it'll give you the magnitude. You know, with any of these things, as I was answering with one of your fellow board members, the information we're looking at is at one point in time. And so, you know, what I tell you today is going to be different than if you looked at it, 6 months from now or a year from now. And what we're generally laying out is, it's based on assumptions. So assuming the district is this size, this demographics, these things, this is what it, could look like. So it's not I wouldn't say, I told you it's $1 million, and when it comes out to 2 million, don't get mad at me.
But it's going to give us
The magnitude, yeah.
a magnitude of it. So
Yes.
that's going to give us a little bit more direction as far as, because right now we're talking about numbers in the ether. So
Correct.
The report itself would give us a little bit more of the scope.
Correct.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Board Member Lofthouse?
Just a couple questions. So in the instance that Mr. Hui brought up, where all schools in the Rancho Cordova city limits be part of this Rancho Cordova, do all 3, 4 school districts need to then also meet the 9 criteria for that situation? All of them need to?
It's not the individual districts that are meeting the 9 criteria, it's the reorganization.
Okay.
And so it's the before and after, and does what the school districts look like now versus what the new school districts look like.
But they would have to be part of meeting that 9 criteria.
Correct.
So that scope gets much larger.
Yes.
Okay. And then, given that it's a snapshot right now, and we're looking at our budget for the state, do we consider that 3-year outlook on that budget when we're looking at significant impact on state funding?
That is something that we would take a look at to see if in those 3 out years, you still look like you're holding the reserves that you're supposed to, that you're going to be able to, meet the budget requirements from the state and from your county. So yes, we'd be looking at that
So
information.
hypothetically, if the district 3 years out is looking at a deficit, which we went over last meeting, if that is the current state of the state budget, and we're looking 3 years out, and we're looking at this as a possibility, that significance probably gets much smaller. So if we're already looking at a deficit in 3 years, and we're looking at creating an entire new district, a second district out of it, that impact or that significance is a bigger piece of the pie.
Potentially. I guess it depends on your reserves. It depends on what measures you're putting into place, but that is possible.
Okay. And then maybe this is a question for Dr. Kaligian, but just looking at the 9 criteria, is this something that the district could pull some information before we pay for the feasibility study? Just using the dashboard, using our demographics?
There's possibly some of the LCFF criteria we could pull ahead of time. Mr. Martin has done a preliminary look at that information. We wouldn't be nearly as in-depth as a feasibility study, but some of the information that comes off the dashboard, we could probably summarize some general trends, but not to the same degree.
Okay. That's all.
Thank you. On the 9 statutory criteria, you've mentioned it, I think, both ways, that you have to meet all the conditions, and then I think you've also mentioned you have to substantially meet all the conditions. Is substantially in the statute?
Yes, it's substantially met.
Substantially met, okay, all right. A feasibility study, how long would you anticipate something like that to take if the district were to pursue that?
So from when we receive all the data that we need from the parties, whether it's just this district or if the scope is larger, we estimate 8 to 10 weeks to be able to complete that study.
Okay. And would the feasibility study be taking a look at how the bonds are created and situated within the district?
Part of the criteria is to look at how there would be that division of property. And so we would look at the bond dollars to see what the outstanding amount is and then provide potential assumptions of how those could be split.
Yeah, I know, I think, Superintendent, we have 5 SFIDs, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and I think 2 of the SFIDs are entirely within the Folsom boundaries. 2 of them are entirely in the Rancho Cordova boundaries, but 1 does straddle both cities. How would that be handled if you have an existing bond that crosses what would potentially be the line between the 2 districts?
Yeah, that's the, I literally was just dealing with that on another one. And there's nothing in the law that allows for the split of an SFID that's across the boundaries. We had an attorney opinion that looked at it and figured out that there were possible avenues, but none of it has been tested in court. And so, you know, the easiest thing is it gets paid off and it's not an issue anymore, but there's nothing that actually allows the actual split of them. And so that's definitely would require some attorneys to get involved at that point. But that is going to be one of the stickiest situations.
If hypothetically in that SFID that splits the district, the two areas, if all of the construction has occurred in one half of the district and not in both,
that is not part of the consideration. It really is, you know, you set up an SFID, you sold bonds to bondholders and they want their money back, and there's nothing in law that allows you to break that apart before they get paid.
Okay. So I want to understand a little bit more about the options, and I'm basing some of this on the recollection from our prior meeting with you. So hypothetically, if the school district decides to take the lead on this, my understanding was that all we have to split is our territory that is currently FCUSD, correct? So if hypothetically we were to split, then roughly, let's say about 70% of the city of Rancho Cordova is in the FCUSD. That means they would only get the 70% that is within their district. And if I remember correctly, you said if the district chooses to take the lead, you literally would be creating 2 new school districts. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, if one of the cities were to take the lead on it, that is the way, hypothetically, if the desire is to have 100% of your territory within your city to belong to a new school district, only the city has that ability to do that. Is that correct?
In this particular case, just the city, but homeowners could do it. The other parties could bring forward a petition to do that as well.
So hypothetically, if the city of Rancho Cordova were to do that, there are lands outside of the city of Rancho Cordova, namely Mather, which is on the other side of the city of Rancho Cordova. Mm-hmm. So you would have a situation that you would have FCUSD land that would be non-contiguous to the existing district. You would have the Folsom portion, you have the city of Rancho Cordova, and then you would have land on the other side that presumably would remain with the district. Would that not be the case?
If what the city council would be to propose is they want a school district that's within their contiguous boundaries, and they would be effectively requesting a territory transfer. They'd want to pull all of the property within their boundaries outside,
Right.
then whatever the remaining district is, that is potentially a possibility.
So if the city of Rancho Cordova were to look at taking the lead, would, and I'll continue to call it FCUSD, because, correct me if I'm wrong, on that scenario, you would only be creating one new school district. You would have one school district continuing if the city took the lead, and one new school district? Or would there be two new school districts in that scenario?
So in that scenario, I would argue it's probably what they call as a territory transfer. It's still creating a new district. And so it's pulling property out of one into another. But you're saying that also includes the property that's within Elk Grove and those other school districts.
What I meant is, would the remaining part of the district that is not within the city of Rancho Cordova's limits remain the existing district, or would that be considered a new district as well?
I guess it just depends on how they put it forward. If they're putting it forward as a territory transfer, we want to pull this property out to start our own, then the existing Folsom Cordova stays.
Okay.
Versus if you're actually saying, no, we're going to take this existing district and we want to split it into two, then the existing district effectively goes away and you have two new districts.
Okay, so if the city of Rancho Cordova were to do that, there's nothing that would prevent the FCUSD transferring Mather, which is outside the boundaries, but it would be non-contiguous to the new school district.
Transferring it to Rancho Cordova?
Rancho Cordova, yeah.
That could be part one of the items that has to be put forward, or what you're putting forward when somebody's putting a petition or resolution, is the boundaries of what's going to be affected. And if you had an agreement from the very beginning that was going to be part of those boundaries, then the boundaries of that resolution could include all of that property.
Even though it's outside the boundaries of Rancho Cordova?
Yes,
Okay.
if they...
Okay. Now, another scenario that I don't think we discussed, hypothetically, if we decide to remain one district, but there's a desire to pull in, same scenario, areas from Elk Grove and Sac Unified, so that all of the city of Rancho Cordova is in FCUSD. Is that still a possibility? How would that go about? Would it be FCUSD approaching the two other school districts saying, we would be interested, if you're interested in doing a territory acquisition? Or is there still the option for the city to do it, even though the territory that they would be looking to obtain will remain in FCUSD?
Either way could work. If the districts got together and came to an agreement, that's the easiest, happiest process, so to speak, with everybody on board. But the city council could put forward a petition to transfer territory from other school districts into Folsom Cordova.
Have you seen very many examples of where school districts get together and realign their boundaries voluntarily through agreement?
I haven't worked on any recently, but I'm sure they're out there.
It's a big state, right?
I have seen, as I said, city councils wanting to pull property from one school district into another to be contiguous with their boundaries, though.
Okay. All right. Those are my questions for right now, and thank you for explaining that. After the last meeting, I was trying to go through those different scenarios in my head, and I realized we missed one of those scenarios, which was let's keep FCUSD together, but pull in some territory for the benefit of the Rancho Cordova.
Mr. Reed, can I ask one more question?
Sure, yeah.
It just kind of came up. I'm not sure if they would be considered programs or property, but if we have two new charter schools opening in Rancho Cordova that were approved by FCUSD. So do those get transferred? Do those remain? Are those part of that conversation of division of property, or?
Charter schools are, I'm assuming it's independent charter schools. They are their own legal entity. So the sticky part comes out with then who is officially their authorizer. But it's not that automatically they come along with you because they're not one of your schools, they're their own separate local educational agency.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Did anybody want to ask any questions of Sean Martin regarding the history? If not, we can just... No? Okay. So what if there's agreement or consensus, what we should do perhaps is let the public make comments, and then we can bring it back for discussion, if that's all right? Okay. We would like the public, if you are interested in speaking, to fill out these cards. And where would they get a copy of the cards? They're in the back. So just fill those out, and we will be providing 3 minutes for comments, and we'll start with Heidi Moore. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having this meeting tonight. Again, my name is Heidi Moore, and my family lives in Cavallo Ranch neighborhood, which is actually part of Elk Grove Unified School District, even though we live in Rancho, Cordova. And I have 4 kids that attend the schools there, ranging from elementary to high school. And my statement tonight is in favor of the city or district conducting this study to consider possible reorganization of the districts. I believe that my children would be better represented and better served as part of a smaller Rancho Cordova school district. Currently, our neighborhoods are added to a very large district with more than 60,000 students, and I feel that students in our neighborhoods are considered as an afterthought in many important decisions. Our middle and high schools are more than 20 minutes away. Transportation is difficult to arrange for families. The district school bus transportation is less than ideal. Many students using the district bus system leave their homes at 6:30 in the morning and don't get home until 5 o'clock in the evening. Our children attend overcrowded schools where there is often insufficient or closed bathroom facilities. Pleasant Grove High School will sometimes only have 5 bathroom stalls available per gender at a time. This is unacceptable when they have more than 2,000 students attending this school. Parent concerns about facility, transportation, sexualized curriculum, and more fall on deaf ears. I feel that students and parents in our neighborhood are not valued as part of the Elk Grove Unified School District, and I feel that it would be beneficial for our neighborhood to be part of a school district in the city in which we reside. It would better unite our city and give better representation to all kids in Rancho Cordova. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Jennifer Lane.
Good evening, and thank you for hearing us out. I was a school teacher in Folsom, Cordova for 27 years. I did my first 5 years in Rancho Cordova at Walnutwood School. And then they were building Oak Chan in Folsom, so I relocated there by no choice of my own, but they were getting rid of Walnutwood. It wasn't going to be a school anymore, so. I have loved the experience with Folsom Cordova. My girlfriend and I, she was a teacher that just retired, we talk about it all the time, how lucky we were to have this amazing career. The thing that comes to my mind that is going to present a problem on this 9 statutory criteria is number 3. Folsom, the site of Folsom, has gotten rid of their Granite School, their original elementary school that we held many, many meetings in over the years. They got rid of the busing area. We no longer have a school, an administration office. That's been sold. So we're pretty much a skeleton crew there. For number 3, the equitable division of property and facilities. This building is in Rancho Cordova. I don't see how we're going to make it through this with Folsom having sold all of their land and buildings, and I can't think of anything that Cordova has there in Folsom itself. So that has been my biggest issue. And then when I saw this 9 statutory criteria, I said, oh, there it is. Other than that, I'm on the Measure G Oversight Committee as well. And so that'll be interesting when we have another meeting to find out how this is going to pan out through that. Is that what you were talking about, Dave? You mentioned you had it in 2 letters and 2 numbers, and
I'm not sure what you're referencing.
well, I'm referencing what you were talking about. Yes.
SFID.
Yeah.
That
money.
SFID is entirely within the city of Folsom. Yeah.
The Measure G money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That could be a problem as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Madeline Sanderson. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Madeline Sanderson. As shared, I grew up here in this district. I've been in Rancho Cordova my whole life. Okay. I work at Folsom Cordova Community Partnership. We are one of the community partners with the district. I serve families on both sides within my caseload, and I can tell you that on both sides of the communities, they're having different experiences. And Rancho Cordova side, we are always, just think of facilities. The upkeep in Folsom is different than the upkeep here in Rancho Cordova. I know that, I've been up here many times to share that. I've shared that with Dr. Clegan. She's been really great at, discussing stuff with me. I know that one time we had a meeting and someone, we had some of the district staff come out to go check these, buildings, like RCE, for example. We had a wall that had mold in it. Okay, so that's not having good upkeep. And so I would like to have a feasibility study done to at least see. I mean, this is what this is about tonight, is about just seeing if what we would get with the data from a feasibility study. We cannot get the data that we need unless we have that done. I know that many residents have shared that they want to. I know there are a few that do not, but we've got to check it out. I mean, it's for the kids, right? We say it's for the kids all the time. This is something that would be a great benefit for us to at least check the data for the students here in Rancho Cordova and Folsom. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other cards. Let's go online. Is there anybody online that wishes to speak? Ed, welcome. Ed?
Can you hear me?
Oh,
Can you
Mr.
hear me?
Short, how are you, Ed?
Hey,
Good. Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. You guys, I miss you guys. Glad to be on there. I wouldn't miss this for the world. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to talk. You guys are doing a great job. I just want to say one thing. Right off the bat, right here, speaker, stop about the facility deterioration, because bond money takes care of facilities. When Jen and Madeline talk about facilities as separate from this discussion altogether, everybody knows it's the voters that talk about facilities. So let's stop about talking about. Number 1, ADA. I'm going to give you a lot of history. I know Linda Budge talked, everybody talked. Hey, I've been around for 20 years. I was all there at the ground floor when Rancho Cordova supported to stop a split 20 years ago, because they understood that the benefit of all kids, who Folsom kids, would not do segregation and have any type of tainted racism to it. That was the biggest issue back then. That's why I ran, was to prevent that. And we were successful. So number 1, ADA, money. Teresa Stanley and I, we talked about this over a lot of times. It's not the first time. And we did white papers. We looked at everything. The economy of scale of splitting it is just ridiculous. You have to be like Elk Grove. We're at 90,000 ADA. We're at 2022. We really haven't, you talk about growth, but Rancho Cordova didn't really grow. They went stagnant. They hasn't really, Elliott Homes out here, they didn't do anything. It's like 2020. We really had a decline enrollment. We're balancing out 2020. So if you split the district, you're going to be at a small district. And anybody that goes to CSB and get a master's in governance understands small districts struggle. They have the economy, scale economy is struggling. They always struggle. What I see in the region, most small districts want to unify to get this concept. So that's number two. Charters. It seems like the Folsom school board members want to charter out Rancho Cordova. If you even have the concentrated grant that came in for $8 million, as that build out, everybody knows in the meetings, that build up, these charters are going to take $8 million away from you during that time. So if you split, even if you get this concentrated grant, which I hear the state's not going to like that because you're already segregating, it's going to go away. You're going to go into a deficit and a down spiral deficit. It's just so obvious. 20 years of experience. The subgroups of Rancho Cordova, yeah, it changed. I know Linda Bitchak, but it's more Hispanic now. We have our kids at Promise that we're talking about. Jen, you said there was 2 board members that said, one from Folsom and Jen. Jen was on the board in second meeting. Are you kidding me? She didn't know anything about it. She just promoted it. And I don't know who the second one was. David, was that you? I don't know. But, you know, the community is not at large. The voters, it has to come from a grassroots. I respect all the city council, everybody. I get that. But you can hear what this is. This is a monumental task. There has never been a successful petition in 40 years. 40 years. I was here. I went to all the county meetings. I heard it. 4 out of 5 of the petition, you might make it. You might make it, but you're not going to get to the state. To my opinion, and right now I'm a citizen, it's a waste of taxpayers' money to even go any further. It takes money away from our kids. The community identity
Mr. Short,
if
you could wrap up, the 3 minutes.
Well, I thought you said it was unlimited at first. So now it's not, David? So
Not unlimited time, unlimited individuals.
Well, I'm going to tell you, on community identity, if you're going to do anything, you mentioned the Elk Grove. Yeah, that was what it started. David Sanders, I was at those meetings. They will never, ever give up that property. That's why Bob McGarvey's elementary school was mentioned, Sac City, because it has to do with ADA money. It will never happen. So you talk about splitting up the facilities, that's not going to happen either. You got the central office. That's
If you could wrap up in 10 seconds, please.
So, hey, you said I could talk. Okay, so let me talk. The Crescent costs are going to be so phenomenal. The charters are going to kill you. They're independent.
Thank you. Do we have any other individuals online? Okay. And no more yellow cards? Okay. Then I guess we'll bring it back to the board and the city councils for discussion. And why don't we start with the city of Rancho Cordova?
David, do you want individuals to express support or not at the same time?
Just thoughts, they don't need to have any definitive statements, just, kind of their thoughts in the process, where they are right now, if they would be supportive
So we'll
of
come
a
back
study.
after we all go around, then we'll come back and see if there's a general consensus one way or another.
Sure.
Okay.
We can also entertain more questions if there's questions
Oh,
for
okay,
the consultants.
super. Okay, Garrett.
I want one of those buttons. How do you do that? Oh, it doesn't work.
It's on.
Hello? Okay.
Hello.
It's amazing. Stacy, I want one of those buttons. I am so excited that we finally got here. This took a lot of work. This is the first one of its time. And it's because we as a group all realize that there's two cities that have 2 identities and 2 groups of kids that would be better situated if we were 2 school districts. Now, there's a lot of different ways to cut it because we've been taking some other consulting, like Folsom Cordova School District would rename its name to Folsom Unified School District, and then we would start a brand new school district for Rancho Cordova. That's another way to do it. Absorbing Elk Grove and Sac City at the same time makes the likelihood even smaller, but we still can go for that at the same time. I am down. Rancho Cordova has been wanting this and wanting to be able to stand on legs, and we are not going to fight it. Last time we were thinking that, years ago we were trying to stop it because we thought they were leaving us, and now it's not you, it's us kind of conversation as a group. And honestly, I think it's just the whole group as a community agrees that it's time. It's not even a fight. Like, we're all friends in Folsom, Cordova. It's just we have different identities. And I think the cities would be better spent as we draw ourselves into these two districts. And yes, we have different demographics. So the squishy is going to be very squishy because we have a higher percentage of African Americans, Hispanics in our group in Rancho Cordova. We're more of a working class type of city than Folsom, Cordova, but that's okay. That's our identity, and we like that. And so, yeah, we're going to draw this, and we're going to go for this, and it's two cities agreeing at the same time. We don't have a problem with Folsom Unified becoming its own school district. We don't have Rancho Cordova becoming its own school district, and we as a city happen to have quite a bit of discretionary funds, and Micah likes when I say I'm going to spend all of it on our school district. Don't panic. It's going to be okay. But, you know, it's one of those things like we as a city, if we were to become our own school district, and once we get this report back, we can help them get that way. If we have to, as a city, take out a $700 million bond to go fix all our buildings and bring them up to ADA compliance and get rid of the termites and all that stuff, then that's what we got to do. You know, we are ready as a city to kind of stand our own, have our own schools district. And yes, we want to definitely absorb Anatolia. I feel so bad for those parents because I'm one of those parents who just refused to get on that damn bus for 45 minutes and having kids that have to pee on the bus because they can, or they can't use the pencils because they're stabbing in the back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you know you want to be part of this because we didn't move to Rancho Cordova to go to school in Elk Grove. And it's nothing against Elk Grove. It just, we've now outgrown all these situations. They can't have 12 buses show up. Half our kids forget to get on them. Dang it, Jacob. But it's time. And I'm glad to see my whole community here. And you guys know that we want what's best for Folsom and Cordova, and it's that step. And I'm not able to hide my emotions because this took 6 years of concentrated work to finally get to the point where we're as a community, both communities, okay with saying it's time to separate. And I only know that once we separate Rancho Cordova, because we've had a lot of time, we really focus inwards and we're going to uplift our entire schools. They'll get better. We'll get more people. We'll be able to annex in, hopefully, Elk Grove, who also would love us to annex in Rancho Cordova parents because we keep showing up at those board meetings. Good job, guys. Keep it up. But it's time. It's time for us to draw ourselves into one big city. And yes, we're going to take Mather because everyone in Mather already thinks they're part of Rancho Cordova. They forget all the time that they're not part of our city, but we're going to draw them into, and we'll put our city back together again. And I know that as two districts, you know, I'm not a historian. That's why I have Linda here. But she can remember that at one time, Rancho Cordova was the big dog, and Folsom needed help, and we stepped up and lifted them up to become the amazing school district or area that they are. And now it's time for us to break away, look inward, and kind of repair everything so Rancho Cordova can be the amazing school district that it always meant to be. And I don't see one of these, like, we're not going to try to find ways to fight this because I know we are the ones that kind of sat on 4 and 5 and 6 and bounced on those. But I think now we're going to be the ones to show how we can reach those goals. And no matter what the lady comes back with, we're going to find a way as a city to help our baby school district get to where it needs to be. So that's it.
And you, Garrett.
I'm very excited. Very excited.
Yes, we can tell.
I know.
Siri.
Thank you, Council Member. So as we've heard many times, Rancho Cordova has grown over the years, and so has Folsom. And as such, you know, the schools are bursting at its seams, and we are busing our kids to different cities. Rancho Cordova is very diverse, and we have about 4 school districts in one city. So we're going to take this one step at a time, starting with Folsom Cordova School District, to see how we can start with that, and then try to see how we can incorporate the rest of the school districts. But to answer the first question, we're going to start with, I think this is the Folsom Cordova School District, and not like try to do everything at one time. I think that's the point of today's discussion. So to make a short answer, I'm all in for this feasibility study. I think it's a great thing to see how this is going and how this will improve both our cities. Thank you.
Thank you, Siri. David.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to apologize right up front for the length of my comments. I hope they're a little entertaining, maybe a little perk your ears, but what I need to say, I think, on behalf of Rancho Cordova is not a short comment. And I'm going to start with a little history that you can kind of see in the stuff that was presented, but not entirely. So I've been on council 20 years, more than 20 years in office now, but Rancho Cordova is almost 20 years old. Linda and I are both serving that term, and probably 25 years in Rancho Cordova civic leadership. When I started, I was a young 30-year-old guy. Look what has happened. So warning to all those of you who are new. But the history of Rancho Cordova honestly starts before I had anything to do with it. Back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, Rancho Cordova was the Folsom of our area. Rancho Cordova was home to Aerojet. Rancho Cordova was home to Mather Air Force Base. Rancho Cordova was home to a lot of the industry that was home here in Sacramento. So I think it was in 1980, the Sacramento Bee did a story, and I have this on a huge poster at my house, and it's like the cover of the Sacramento Bee, you can imagine, and down in the lower part they said, what community of Sacramento County is the best to live in? Which one is the best? And on the front they didn't really give you much, there's just a teaser. You open it up, it's a full page of like statistics and measures. And immediately the faraway winner was Rancho Cordova. There was no real competition. You want to look at average educational level? We had more PhDs than Davis living in Rancho Cordova. That was the most educated population in the region, was Rancho Cordova. We were the wealthiest population in the region. We had the greatest, they didn't have all the stats we do now, but we had the best child mortality rates, right? The poverty rate was lowest in Rancho Cordova. Every measure they had practically said Rancho Cordova was the winner. But when you sort of fast forward from that, you see a different scenario developing. So that was the 60s, that was the 80s. Some things happened that changed, and some of it is just the aging of suburbia, which I'll talk about a little bit more, but some of it was other, exterior factors. The Cold War cooled down, right, and ended. The Soviet Union imploded. Mather Air Force Base went away in 1991, right, Linda? 93, sorry, I always get that wrong.
Story.
1993. But before that, Aerojet went from 23,000 employees to like 2,300 employees. So there was a huge hemorrhage of jobs out of Rancho Cordova. And at the same time that was happening, Folsom was beginning to blossom. El Dorado Hills was blossoming. And so the natural suburban pattern that happens all across the United States happened. The people who had more opportunity or wealth or ability would leave an older community and seek the shiny new neighborhood somewhere nearby. And so that's what happens. And you get a transfer sort of leadership and wealth to the neighboring suburb. And then, here in Folsom, just think 30 years in the future, what today's suburb looks like, it will be vastly different than what it was. This is the trend nationwide. It's how it works. We had a few other big blows, though, in our community, some of which aren't fully recognized. One of them, this school board, none of us here, this school board was implicit in. And that was the transfer of Gold River, which should have been in this school district, and should have been that new home growth area that people could have moved up to within the community of Rancho Cordova. That was excised from this school district and given to San Juan in exchange for a bunch of land up here that I'm not going to attempt to quantify, but that sort of made the city of Folsom whole in terms of school district boundaries and city boundaries. So basically it was taking Gold River out of Rancho Cordova, giving it to San Juan, and taking a part of San Juan and putting it into the Folsom Cordova district. So it's a land swap between the two districts. The practical effect on us, and a guy named Powell was the developer of Gold River, brilliant guy. He defeated this suburban decline trend. You can just go to Gold River now and see it. He defeated that, but he also defeated Rancho Cordova in the process. If we have a hall of fame in Rancho Cordova. If we had a hall of shame, he's chapter 1. Because what happened was everyone moving into Gold River wanted nothing to do with the name of Rancho Cordova. Their kids did not go to the same school. He got the postal code changed. He excised our future and our health from Rancho Cordova. He cut our heart out, in essence, as a community. That was a bigger blow, probably, than the loss of 20,000 jobs at Aerojet and the loss of Mather, but both of those are also significant. And the school district, again, played a role in that part of the decline. But as I said, suburbs decline. In Rancho Cordova, 20 years now, we have worked really hard to turn that around. And there are a couple of factors that are really important in turning around. Number one, safety. You have to be safe. When all of us choose where we're going to live, first thing we look at is this a safe community? It's just our natural human reflex. We all strive for safety. And we've achieved that in Rancho Cordova. We are remarkably safer than almost every other part of the county. Huge success there. The number 2 thing they look for, guess what it is? School quality. That's the number 2 factor. Does it apply to everybody? No. If you're a senior citizen, it may not matter. But for most home buyers, average home buyers, schools are number 2 on that list. So the quality of schools in a community is going to matter a great deal in how attractive that community is to new home buyers or people who are going to reinvest in their homes, et cetera. And that is a challenge that my colleagues and I have faced for 20 years and not moved the dial, with only of a couple of exceptions. And that probably more than anything else is what brings us here today. Now, I don't want to degrade the efforts of anybody in this room. We have had great people working in the school district. We work under state mandates and all sorts of external challenges, and we've had some great successes. We've had successes in recent years with investing in like sports facilities and in partnerships between the city and the school district that are really healthy and strong. We've had bond investments passed repeatedly, bond measures passed repeatedly in Rancho Cordova, trying to rectify our situation with regard to facilities. We've seen great leadership here at the district, a series of great superintendents, all, I think, working, for the betterment of Rancho Cordova. And we have improved some of our schools, but there are still enormous inequities, massive inequities. Schools on each end of this district are not comparable. It's in part who attends those schools. I think that's the excuse I hear most often, but it's also facilities. It's measured in test scores. It's measured in the sort of awards that schools on each end of this district receive. Heartbreakingly, it's measured most, I think, in expectations. Expectations on one end of this district are wildly different from expectations on the other, culturally. I mean, within this culture of the school. And investments now are wildly inequitable. If you want to measure that in some way, and measurement is critical to what we do, you have to look to something, like this, the state test scores, which are now more hidden than ever, or at least more hidden since when they were originally implemented. I think that's because those test scores were driving divisions in communities like ours. So this district is probably an exemplar of that problem. But, today I just looked at great schools data, and I know my mom's a teacher or an education researcher. I know a lot of this is garbage, what shows up in a great schools analysis of a school. But nonetheless, for 90-some% of the population, this is the best measure they have. And the one that shows up on every real estate page and every debate that parents have at a, kindergarten soccer game about where their kids are going to go to school. And what you see is Folsom end of the district, you can slump as low as a 7 on the 1 out of 10 scale. But in Rancho Cordova, we only get to that at Riverview Elementary, which is the STEM charter, when they get to a 9. Otherwise, the Rancho Cordova end of the district, we're talking about 2s and 3s and 4s. Folsom end of the district, I think your average is probably 9. So vastly different opinions and outcomes. And I think, I didn't dive into the database of the state on test scores, but I think you would find a similar pattern there, roughly. And I think that sort of discrepancy has been mentioned before here at the board and just in some recent months. This has a massive effect on Rancho Cordova. This drives down our property values enormously. This drives up the property values in Folsom enormously. It's sort of just a little mental exercise I use when giving talks like this about suburban decline around the country. Just imagine you're in a very poor neighborhood where housing is not really sought after. It's just sort of like maybe the last choice for some people. And you take a 10 out of 10 school and put it there. What do you think happens to those real estate values? They skyrocket. Parents are going to flock towards that. Wow, I can buy that house for that price and my kid gets that education. That's the nature of our difficulty. We've had other ways to measure other than this. Previous administration, school district had a great partnership with Rancho Cordova where we were trying to promote great things that happened in our schools. And I actually kept score on those. And the ratio was about 7-to-1, great things happening in Folsom schools versus great things happening in Rancho Cordova schools by the system that was in place at the district level reporting those. And we had a lot of discussions about those in 2x2s, but that's pretty much where that's at. You don't have a current system that's generating that many stories about good news on each end of the district, so I've quit keeping that score. But that sort of showed, what's going on at one end versus the other and the sort of the challenge we face. You can see this in student teams, like academic teams in the region, where they're having greater success, and you can sure as heck see it in facility conditions. So, while we're seeing brand new $70 million elementary schools being built here in the growth area of Folsom, we have 70-year-old schools in Rancho Cordova where I think they're trying to add a vice principal to the staff, but there's not room for an office for the vice principal. There just isn't enough room at the school. It's 70 years old. It's not designed for education today. It's designed for education in the 1950s. But that's still our school, and that's the best we've been able to muster. We know that we have hundreds of school students from Rancho Cordova, hundreds of families, I should say, who live in Rancho Cordova, but find whatever mechanism they can to send their kids to school at the Folsom end of the district, because they perceive those schools to be better. I say hundreds because we haven't done a really proper measure in a while, and I think there are an awful lot of people who escape even the measures. I personally know from just friendships that, there are people who are using grandma's address in Folsom as the home of the kid, although the kid lives in Rancho Cordova. So I don't know the magnitude of that, but the effect of that is pretty incredible. I'll just mention a few. I could go on at length there. In recent years, there was a state championship wrestling team from here in Folsom. If you dive down on who was on that team, that was a Rancho Cordova team. That was not a Folsom team. It had a name of Folsom. Kids are from Rancho Cordova. Their parents just chose a better athletic, academic, whatever they felt outcome, got their kids to this end of the district. These are painful to talk about, actually. Last year, there were really good softball teams, both at Cordova and Folsom. You know what the teams called themselves? The Cordova team was called Cordova A. The Folsom High team was called Cordova B, because they all came from the Rancho Cordova Girls Softball League. They were Rancho Cordova kids going to Folsom schools. This year, the baseball coach at Cordova High School was expecting to have a very strong freshman team. Had 14 players come all the way up to Rancho Cordova Little League. He started looking around freshman year. Where are my kids from my freshman team? Found them in Folsom. One parent had decided, I think it's better up there. The group followed. And the worst one of these of all for me was my son just graduated from high school, so he would have been 6 years old. This is a dozen years ago, and we were in a soccer league in Rancho Cordova Soccer. We're sitting around at the after party at the end of the season, right? And I think this was at the skating rink in Rancho Cordova. And all these parents are just sort of standing around saying, well, where's your kid going to go to school next year? And every single parent on my son's team said, not Rancho Cordova. 100% of them broke my heart. Because at that point, we'd been a city for years. But yet, this educational divide, this perception of a difference, was just killing community in Rancho Cordova. There's a lot more. I don't think I can talk about that. So, seeing all this in this unified district, I would expect, serving in your positions, the challenge would be, how do you balance this? How do you make this somehow more equitable? To put it crudely, the way I'd probably describe it is find every spare penny you possibly can that is free of a mandate, scrape that, and try to help those kids that are most challenged in Rancho Cordova, because our success rates down there are wildly lower than what they are up here. That would seem to me to be a moral imperative. But I think, aside from that, or in addition to that, there are just too many structural barriers to accomplishing this. It's, for whatever reason, there's a lot of reasons why someone might have more fun as an administrator or a teacher at the Folsom end of the district as opposed to the Cordova end. It's probably harder. on our end. It's different on our end. We've seen some successes. I'd say Riverview STEM is a wild success down there. It now has a majority of Rancho Cordova students. That sort of proves there's a different way to do things, but we haven't really seen a follow-on to that. You would think achieving that sort of success in one spot, you'd want to leverage it for the equity in the neighborhood. That hasn't happened, but I would expect something like that. And often, you know, I hear socioeconomic sort of blamed for this. And to me, that's an interesting excuse. It's better than what I heard 15 and 20 years ago in the previous attempts, which someone here previously characterized as, you know, near racist. I certainly heard those sorts of comments back then. I don't think that has anything to do with this now. But there are differences. But I think the challenge to the educational establishment is not to say we have a program and we deliver it equally district-wide. It's to say, boy, the program works pretty well here, but this is a different group. Do we need a different program? I fear that as one district, you can't do that. I think you might be handicapped in your ability to do that, maybe by the state. I'd like to learn more about that. Maybe this process can help us elucidate that. But something in Rancho Cordova has to be different. Something has to be more like Riverview STEM and less like business as usual, because for 20 years, in this leadership position, I've heard variations of, oh, just wait for this next great thing. There's one more, you know, just wait. And, you know, my time as an elected official is not unlimited. And this is probably the #2 issue for us in Rancho Cordova. And we've devoted a lot of energy to it, and we need to do something. Dividing a district is not something that should be taken lightly. It is, I'm a scientist, I'm a medical researcher. This is severe medicine, maybe even a radical surgery. But the question is, what is the alternative? Keep doing what we're doing? We don't have enough success to justify keep doing what we're doing. There has to be a better way. And so I hope in this process, we can do this study and have a really good discussion about what that better way is. Maybe it is 2 districts. Maybe there are other options. I want to hear those. But what I do know is that I can't just wait for one more new program or opportunity. We have to find something better for our kids. So thank you for that amount of time.
So I couldn't possibly follow that. I can tell you that I've got 2 grown men sons who are both Cordova High grads. They came through Cordova Baptist Preschool and Gardens and Mills, and 4 of 6 grandchildren that have all, 3 have graduated from Cordova and 1 will graduate in another 2 years. And I know they've gotten good educations that enable them to be successful young people. But as David said, as everybody has said, they're still doing it in buildings that were built in the 50s and 60s to that standard. And believe me, we treasure our smaller schools in Rancho Cordova. I don't want anybody's kids going to an elementary school with 2,000 kids in it. And I feel extremely sorry for the people in Elk Grove because their education model is so dramatically different. David had some really great questions. It's our information that not all 9 criteria had to be made that completely satisfied, that they simply have to have good answers. Because there's some things about the differences between the population in Rancho Cordova and the population in Folsom that are not going to meet anybody's criteria because we're just 2 completely different groups of people. I appreciate your asking about the bond questions because we know, as David said, we had several bonds that were specifically passed in Rancho Cordova and several that were specifically passed in Folsom. And then there's the one in the middle that needs to be divided somehow. But we'll get to all that. The bottom line is the only way, it seems that the only way anything is really going to change is to really try to establish a school district that is the identity and character of the city of Rancho Cordova. And I appreciate the fact that that a new district would probably include Mather if you look at those boundaries, because this is like LAFCO. You can't just leave isolated islands of land out somewhere. But since school districts are different from the city limits, it wouldn't matter. And then unfortunately, we have to tackle Elk Grove later and maybe even Sac City later. But the only way that we are going to even start on this road to get the information that we need in order to make an educated, and that's not a pun, in order to make a truly educated decision about this, is to have this study go forward and at least take that look at what it would mean, how it would work, and most importantly, what's the possibilities for the educational program. That's really what it comes down to. We've all toured other cities in the United States. We were introduced to the IB system in Indianapolis, if I remember correctly. We looked at the fact that after Katrina, New Orleans brought their whole education system back by using charter schools. So we know there are other models out there, and one hopes that the state of California is at least willing to look at an educational program that is expansive enough to be able to draw from the best of other regions. So I'm quite certain you've heard us all say that we support going forward with this study.
All right, thank you. We'll go over to the city of Folsom. Vice Mayor Shalma, do you want to go through with your members?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chair. Before I ask my colleagues make their comments, Vice Mayor Sanders, I was just paying attention to you when you were speaking. Even though you made a disclaimer at the beginning, it's going to be a long one. I did not felt that way. You spoke from your heart. Thank you for sharing all that information. I'm sure, if the television channel is casting, hopefully they'll capture some of the great things about the Rancho Cordova. I'm new to this area. 14 years ago, I have to admit, when your kid is going through the program and every parent said, not Rancho Cordova, it hurts. Even just to me listening, it's hurting me as a parent. If I were living in Rancho Cordova, yep. Anyway, I just want to, call that out. Thank you for sharing. And all my colleagues on the other side, Gatewoods and Siri and Mayor Bird, thank you again. So I let my colleagues, start sharing their views. Sarah?
Could I please start with a follow-up question to Ms. Garcia? I'm just wondering, when it comes to the application process, is it more advantageous for the application to come from a city versus a school district? Is it more advantageous if we have a joint? I mean, does it make a difference in the process?
Not really in that respect. I think the only times it makes a difference is when you're talking about multiple districts and all the districts are in agreement. That makes it easy because there's nobody, it makes the process a little bit smoother. But with regards to whether it's the city council or the school district or both together, that won't give you an upper hand one way or the other.
Okay, thank you very much. I generally believe that the more local control, the better. And I completely understand our friends from Rancho Cordova and their desire to have all of their city in one district. In Folsom, we have a little sliver in the American River Canyon neighborhood that's in the San Juan district. I would like to see that, do that territory transfer and bring that into Folsom. So I support going forward with a feasibility study.
Awesome.
Thank you for, all four of you speaking very eloquently as well. It was really good to hear the background. I moved here 3 years ago, and my perception of Rancho has shifted in 3 years. I think you're growing. I think you're getting stronger. I love that you have so much faith in the potential, and knowing that this is number 2 of the reason for that potential. I love the idea that you have all this possibility thinking of what you can be and what you know you can be. And I think that's the reason why I think that we should support you and follow your lead. The thing is, in Folsom, we also have room for improvement. And I believe that a rising tide lifts all boats. And as you grow, and if this happens years down the road and you can continue to get better, it's only going to make us more better. It's not English. It's only going to make us better as well. And I think we have to look at us as a region. And, so yes, I support this study. I think there's still a lot of questions. One of the speakers, public speakers, brought up some questions. I think we need to go through this process to kind of dive through that and see how it's going to affect you and how it's going to affect us. But yeah, this is the right place to start and the right process. So I absolutely support it. And thank you for your input.
Well, I'm sure our vice mayor will have something eloquent to say. And at the risk of being anticlimactic, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't go forward with a study. And I am grateful for the detail with which my colleagues from Rancho Cordova provided an understanding of the fullness of the situation and why they brought this forward. Everyone deserves to have a great school in their neighborhood that they can go to. And if this is a way to get us to that point for Rancho Cordova, hope it works out.
Thank you, colleagues. And are you guys good? Okay. I invested quite a bit in education. The only reason I'm here sitting in front of all of you, just because of that good education. Born and brought up in a rural town and no transportation even till today, but my parents pushed to a good education. I think that's what I am, correlating here when Rancho friends are talking about. Hundreds of parents are sending their kids to other town. It's not a great idea. So I'm in agreement as I joined here and I served almost a decade in schools, PTA, PTSO, the investment, my kids' kindergarten all the way to they're done with high school graduation. So it's worth investing in schools, and at the same time, all the expressions and the feelings you have shared, I'm in support of the study going and collecting the data. I agree with Mayor Budge. The decision is going to be made based on the factual and data-driven decision. So before we go to I know I may have one question for Garcia. We just want to know the scope. It doesn't have to be right now, but the scope of the study. I do see it is 72,500. And Mr. Hui has a great question, are we going to bring the other parts of Rancho into this study as a part, especially Anatolia, what you are saying? Just want to understand, and more importantly, as a processor, as a part of your study, what extent we are trying to take inputs from the residents or the parents, besides whatever it is. I'm trying to read through all the scope of work, but it's not clear.
So for our study and for the work, it's not taking in public input. That would be part of the community process. So when the board is having these discussions, when the city council is having these discussions, then the public has the opportunity to come in and have those conversations. If it goes to the county committee, if you decide to put a petition forward, the county committee has to hold public hearings to hear and get input from the public. But our study is strictly looking at the data and those factors in order to determine whether or not the criteria has been substantially met or not.
So along the lines, I know we have 9 criteria. So when you present your report to this committee or the board, are you going to give us the signal that, the substantial information is the word they are denying? Are you going to give us that clarity for this board that, no, I think all 9 criteria, you guys are pretty strong?
Yes, our analysis is to look at each one of those criteria and look at the data and determine whether we believe they've been substantially met or not, and provide an explanation to support if we believe they're substantially met or not substantially met.
Awesome. Thank you again, Mr. J.
All right, let's start with the student board members again. We will start with board member Shrivastava.
Thank you. I just want to start by thanking all of our council members to attending tonight's meeting. It's such a great experience to have so many diverse perspectives in the room. I truly believe in the educational programs that FCUSD provides, but I do think that it's starkly obvious that there is a disparity in the quality between Rancho and Folsom, whether it be facilities to staff support, to even just the way that our community perceives our schools. It's entirely clear that there is a lack in Rancho Cordova. And I would like to say initially that I'm in support of moving forward with the study. I think there's no harm in finding out if we would fulfill the criteria. However, I do have a lot of concerns about if we will meet the criteria. I think there will be many places where we won't meet the standards held by the criteria, including racial segregation, the quality of educational programs, and making sure that our resources are being equitably split. And I'd additionally like to say that I think I have seen benefits where students thrive in environments where they're able to communicate and interact with students from different backgrounds than their own. And I fear that by separating the district, we would be doing a disservice to our students in that they wouldn't get the opportunity to connect with students on the level that I think we have currently. Like, for example, we had our first district-wide international night this year, and I think it was such a great experience to see students interacting with their peers that they would never have met had it not been for our unified district. But that's not to say that a district reorganization is not the path to go. I think it's just important to keep in mind that there is benefits in exposing our students to the diversity of cultures that exist in our community, and giving them the opportunity to interact with peers of all backgrounds. But I absolutely do support going forward with this study. I think it's important to get all the information before we make a decision regardless. Thank you.
Thank you. Board member Perez.
Yeah, first I want to thank the Folsom Community Council for supporting this and supporting this movement. I was conflicted about it in the beginning of this study, but after listening to this discussion, talking more logistics, I'm more definitely confident that Rancho will thrive if we move forward with this, especially considering the fact that the population on both sides will significantly increase in the prospective years. And though the possibility of not meeting all 9 criteria will arise, I definitely think it is worth investing in the study and continue exploring. So, thank you.
Thank you. Board member Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had a question. It might be for Sean or our rep that was here earlier. I think she's still here, Ms. Garcia. There wasn't any talk about our SELPAs, so I wanted to jot down this question. How many smaller districts are able to maintain their own SELPAs? I'm just kind of curious about that. If we were a smaller district, will we be able to maintain a SELPA? Or would we have to contract out for services?
It's not necessarily contract out. There's the potential, depending on your size, that you might have to join a SELPA, but I really couldn't tell you if it's an issue of size necessarily,
okay,
and how that might work.
Okay, just want a clarification on that.
May I clarify what a SELP is for those who might not know?
Oh,
It's
sorry.
a special education,
Acronyms.
local area plan.
Oh, special education
local plan area.
Yeah.
And there are criteria that a school district would have to meet to be able to become their own. Otherwise, smaller districts become part of like a JPA, a larger organization, such as the County Office of Education. Betty Jo Wessinger is our SELPA director. We serve all of our students with special needs unless they are placed in a non-public placement. But we are large enough of this size, but it took a process to to be able to serve the students, all of our special needs students ourselves with our own resources and the funds that come along with that. So, Ms. Westinger, I don't know if you want to comment about what the criteria, the minimum threshold is, or I know it's not just one criteria.
I wanted to elaborate a little bit because we have only been a single district SELPA for about 12 years now. And prior to that, we were part of Sacramento County SELPA, which is a multi-district SELPA. And at the point in time that we became our own SELPA, our enrollment was around 19,000 students. And at that time, and even today, that's considered just barely meeting the threshold for being able to become a single district SELPA. And so as a single district SELPA, if we were to split into two districts, we'd have to each, most likely we would not each meet the qualifications, that threshold to be single district SELPAs, which means that we would have to apply to become a part of a multi-district SELPA, such as Sacramento County Office of Ed does have a multi-district SELPA. And most likely we would have to apply to become a part, both districts would have to apply to become a part of that SELPA again.
Okay.
Could I just follow up before Betty Jo walks away?
Oh, sure.
What is the financial aspect of that?
So I came into Folsom Cordova shortly after we had become our own SELPA. And what I understood from our superintendent, Debbie Betancourt, at that time is the reason that we applied to become our own SELPA is because when you're part of a multi-district SELPA, they basically take a slice off the top for the services that they are providing. And there are, I believe, 130 SELPAs in the state of California, and they all have a different fiscal allocation plan. And so you'd want to, there's some benefit possibly to looking at how other SELPAs operate and what their fiscal allocation plan is. But in Sacramento County, the Sacramento County SELPA at this point in time is the only multi-district SELPA. But I was told at that time that it was a difference of $1 million for the district, which was one of the reasons that we applied to become our own SELPA, because that returned the money to us. I think the other benefit of becoming our own SELPA was that we were at the size where we could actually provide all of our programs in the district. And so having come from, I was in Grant as a special ed administrator, which was part of Sacramento County as a multi-district SELPA. That's now Twin Rivers, and they're a single district SELPA. But then I was in Dixon, and Dixon was a smaller district. And what it means when you're a smaller district, and also Rockland, is you need to be part of a multi-district SELPA because you don't have the capacity to provide all of the programs in your district. And so that is essentially how you regionalize so that you can send your children to programs that are outside of the district. And so, for example, in Folsom Cordova, we were sending students to county programs, and we were sending to county programs outside of our district, but we also had county programs operating on our campuses in Folsom Cordova. And when we became our own SELPA, then we returned all of those programs in-house, and we provided them in-house.
Mr. Clark, do you have more questions?
Yeah, I mean, just something else just came up. I'm sorry. Well, let me first start off by saying I'm all in for this feasibility study. But please, you all, hear my concerns as we move forward with the study. One, and I said it at the meeting, I believe on the 23rd, that the state is going to be facing, at that time, I thought it was a $25 billion deficit. Now it has increased to $34 billion. That will affect education. Some of it will. Now, keep in mind, this district, for the next 2 years, maybe 3, I'm not sure, and I'm not trying to spread any doom or gloom, but we are going to be in a deficit. And I just want you guys to think about this. Like I said, I want to move forward with this study just to see what happens. Number two, I am actually on the State of California School Board Association as a director, and there's been studies of smaller districts suffering with funding. And this is going to happen for the next 3 to 4 years. Now, what happens beyond that, we don't know, because we don't know what the state budget's going to be like. But I want you all to think about that. The 9 criterias, I was looking at it, honestly, 4 at best are going to be met. Now, I know that we have to do 9 to be considered, or we don't have to. We can move forward with it and roll the dice and take our chances with the county and the state. But right now, we're looking at 4. So my question would be, how do we fix that? Number 5, bringing in these other districts from Anatolia or Sac City or San Juan. Can we be realistic and say that is it possible that that can happen? We don't know. And so again, are we taking that chance again to say, well, we can absorb them? Oh, no, you can't. So that's a concern. And like I said, I'm just going through these concerns. Our fellow student board members brought up something, especially in Rancho Cordova, that worries me. And it was the cut to programs. Our CTE, our EL, our SEL, our special ed. If we are our own district at this time, a separate district, how do we sustain those programs? Because if we are a smaller district, we have to make some hard decisions and some hard cuts. It's not going to run the same. It won't. And we have to be honest with ourselves. It will not be the same. Now, I'm thinking about my teachers. If we go to a smaller district, I think we're going to struggle to be competitive in pay. I honestly think we will. And our teachers are going to suffer. Teachers suffer. Guess what? Our students suffer. So something to consider. And I know that we at the district have a teacher induction program, welcoming our teachers. Where would that go? Will we do it on the Folsom side and the Cordova side? Do we keep that going, or is that something due to budget restraints that we have to let go? So that's something to think about. But like I said, I appreciate all y'all to be here and that we can get here on the table and try to get on the same page. But let's move forward with this. Be cognizant of what we're facing as far as moving forward in the budget, and if we're a separate district and cutting of programs, and I brought up SELPA and I brought up our special ed because that's my heart. And I don't want those kids robbed of anything that they are entitled to, because they deserve an education just like everyone else, whether they're up the hill in Folsom, whether it's here in Rancho Cordova. And I know Council Member Sander, you mentioned something about socioeconomically disadvantaged youth. Yeah, same thing. They deserve an education, and I don't want to cut any programs from them. So those are my thoughts. I was trying to keep it plain and simple, so thank you, sir.
Thank you. Board Member Hui.
Well, thank you, and I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. It's a pretty unique experience. It certainly helps give me a lot more perspective on where we're all coming at from this. It sounds like potentially we do have quite a bit of agreement that this does make sense, at least to move forward with the study. I agree with that, though I think Ms. Loftus brought up something that might have some wisdom if FCUSD is to bring us forward. That I think there is some wisdom in looking at some of these statistics. If we know off the bat that we're not going to hit 4 of these criteria, it doesn't make sense to me to move forward with it. I don't know that I agree with that. I think there's a better opportunity for us to hit potentially all 9 of them. But I would want to know that if one of the cities would want to move forward without that information. I mean, I am in favor of the study. I would love to see it. So that's number one. I do want to say, Mr. Clark, I appreciate the concern. I mean, I share the same concerns, part of what I'd want to see in the study. None of us, I think, around this table want to see any students not get what they deserve and what they are owed. I do want to mention, I know CSBA has mentioned with these budgets, you mentioned the smaller districts are going to be hurt a little bit more. And Dr. Clegan, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe CSBA's definition of a small district is 2,500 students or less.
That's correct.
In 3 or 4 years, if this went through, Rancho Cordova would be the smallest district of the two, and it probably would be about 4 times that size. So I think that's worth noting. Yeah, it creates some potential cuts, but I think it might help in other areas that could balance that out. But I do want to keep that in mind when we're talking about smaller districts. Neither of the districts that we're talking about would fit into that category.
Yeah, if I may interject, Mr. Vice President. I know of one of our neighboring districts up in Placer that has a ADA of 7,500, and they're looking at maybe a 37% cut in their budget. So that's what I was alluding to when I said that. I do understand through CSBA that, yeah, a smaller district is 2,000 or less, but I just wanted to make that point and make that clear to you.
Appreciate the clarification. So, like I said, I'm in favor of moving forward. It sounds like probably the best move forward, as many of the Rancho Cordova City Council members have mentioned, is to start with either a transfer of territory or a reorganization of FCUSD. Theoretically, in 4 years, once that's completed, then the city can also then, talk with Elk Grove Unified, talk with Sac City, talk with San Juan, and try to complete really the vision that you have right now. I don't know that it makes any more sense. It sounds like, according to Ms. Garcia, it doesn't necessarily matter if we're talking about a territory, or transfer of territory or reorganization. So I'd be happy to move forward either way. But yeah, as everybody's mentioned so far, I'm definitely in favor of continuing to look at this with the study.
Thank you. Board Member Lorette.
So for me, first of all, I wanted to make clear that this wasn't something that I just popped up at my first meeting or second meeting and decided that I wanted to do. This is something that has been that's been on my mind. Siri can attest to this. We were in the same leadership class over 3 years ago, and when we went to our leadership class at City Hall, my question to the city manager is, how would you go about doing this? So this isn't something that just came out of nowhere for me. It's very emotional for me. I've had kids in the district for over 15 years, and I feel like I've been the parent that has chosen to stay in Rancho. Like, I had my education in Folsom and had a great education, but I loved the education that my kids were able to get in Rancho Cordova. The diversity that they are offered there is bar none, above and beyond. The experiences that they've been able to have, from cultural experiences to being able to be part of quinceañeras, has been some of their highlights of their life and their school experience. But with that being said, it's been a fight. It's been a fight. It's been, when there has been budget cuts, it often has felt like it came out of the expense of Rancho students. When budget had to be cut, it went to the Mitchell period to be cut first. We could have cut a period at Vista and gone to eliminated a block schedule, but it was Rancho students. So, we're talking about making sure that our disadvantaged students are served, but yet when the budget cut came, it went at the expense of some of our most at-risk students. So for me, it feels like this is the only alternative, and if we can't meet this criteria for this, then it leads us to the next conversation of, how do we get equity then for our students? How do we look at building structures? How do we get what we need for our students? How do we replicate what's been done at Riverview STEM? In the conversation with the principal at Riverview STEM, I asked him, I said, how many students are you getting from Folsom or from El Dorado Hills or from Sacramento into Riverview STEM? And she said, actually very few. Most of the students who are at Riverview STEM come from this neighborhood. And that particular neighborhood is not at our highest socioeconomic level. So excellent education can happen anywhere if people desire for it to be so. And I think that what this is really about is Rancho parents being able to have the opportunity to engage in their kids' education and really feeling like they have an identity. I mean, if you talk to the Little League or you talk to the different sports entities, do you know how difficult it is for them to figure out when to do a spring break in their leagues? It's dang near impossible because they've got to deal with spring break for Elk Grove, they've got to deal with spring break from Sac City, spring break from FCUSD. So inevitably they end up having teams with half players. So, you know, and it's like, I love Folsom, I grew up there, you know, but one thing that was a great advantage was that there was everybody on the same schedule. Everybody had the same leagues. Who you played with in Little League was the same people that you played with in high school sports because there was that community sense. We do not have that. Our kids in our junior sports don't necessarily get to play with those students when they get to the school levels. So and I know we're talking about education, but we're also talking about a whole childhood experience of what they're gaining from this. And, you know, we're talking about a sense of community, and it's really, for Rancho Cordova, we're a community divided. We've got Anatolia and on this side, and we've got Stone Creek on this side, and we've got our legacy schools on this side. And it's like, I think that really what they're asking for is they just want to be able to be made whole. So I feel like for us to be able to look at the study is going to give us at least some data, because no matter what, the data is going to tell us like what is the path forward. Maybe it is a split. Maybe it is a territory transfer. We don't know what that is going to be unless we do the study. And I think that we like owe it to the communities on both sides to really look at those numbers and look at the data. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Board Member Lofthouse.
Okay. I have a list, but I don't know if any of it's going to make sense at this point. So my number one thing is equity in our district. Hands down, it always has been, it always will be. When I was a teacher, when I was an administrator, when I worked for the district, and now when I'm sitting here. That is my bottom line. What I'm hearing, though, is the struggle, because we have an entire community from Anatolia here to support this, yet what I am hearing is we are going to wait 4 years for this to happen for Folsom Cordova. Then we'll start looking at that area. And at that point, those students are going to be graduating from high school at Pleasant Grove. And so I struggle with what the actual goal is. I hear the concerns. I hear them loud and clear. And it's something that we have work to do. We have a lot of work to do. I am in favor of seeing the study. But I think anyone that knows this district inside and out knows for a fact that we will not meet all 9 criteria. And so I think the concern is, and maybe Ms. Garcia can answer this, I'm hearing the city council from Rancho Cordova believe that if we don't meet the 9 criteria in this study, yes, we can move on and we can ignore the study and we can bring it to the county. And if the county says no, then it stops there. If the county says maybe, go ahead, and then it goes to the state and the state says no, the criteria was not met, that's dead. Is
pretty much.
Okay. So while the study is going to come back and it's going to say that we do not meet all 9 criteria, that is going to be a very tough discussion, because at that point, I think we're going to run into 2 very starkly different opinions on how this would continue. While I want to, hands down, 100% engage in the conversation of how can we get schools that are ranking number 9 on great schools in Rancho Cordova? How can we ensure that we have some of the best teachers? And if you come to any of our board meetings in the last, since we've come on, this is a major goal of the district. We're bringing in community schools. It's going to drastically change the way that schools look and function in Rancho Cordova. We are recruiting teachers from across the country to be more diverse, to look like our students, to be able to have students look at them and see themselves in a teaching profession, which is a fantastic profession to have, and to see themselves in other people in their classrooms. And so I also don't want to wait. I completely agree with you, David. I don't want to wait. That is why I'm here. That is why I left the district and ran for school board. But I think that opening up this conversation and being in an environment like this where we can put it all on the table and say, hey, this is what we need to fix because we're not going to meet those 9 criteria. How do we fix it? How do we, as a cohesive unit, as a unified school district, start to look at as a unified school district, as a district that celebrates diversity, as a district that uses both sides of the district and uses all of the people and all of the community and all of the students as an asset for one another, not more division. So I think that's it.
All right, thank you. Ms. Garcia, I had a couple of follow-up questions. So in the various scenarios, the scenario where the district is the applicant to divide into 2 new districts, ultimately, all of the voters within that district have the opportunity to vote on it, correct? That's the final step.
That would be the final step. Technically, it is up to the county committee to make a recommendation to the state board as to who the voters should be, and the state board is the one who decides the voting area. But I can't imagine, given you're a unified district that's splitting, that it wouldn't be the boundaries of the school districts, of the school district.
Under the scenario where a city is the applicant and is looking to incorporate land that is in multiple school districts, who would be the voters in that scenario?
Again, the county committee makes a recommendation to the state board and they decide. In that scenario, it's possible that they decide it includes those other, city areas as well. But it's the state board that's going to ultimately make the decision of where the voting area is.
Okay. We heard at least one comment that maybe twice, we heard that Elk Grove won't allow it if the city of Rancho Cordova wants to take the lead and incorporate areas of Anatolia as well as SAC Unified. My understanding is Elk Grove wouldn't have a say in it if the city of Rancho Cordova was the lead.
Well, the city can put forward the petition. Elk Grove can't stop them from putting forward the petition.
Right.
When it goes to the county committee and likely to the state board, I'm sure Elk Grove would, speak, provide comment, etc. But they can't unilaterally say, no, you can't do this.
Okay. All right. Whereas hypothetically, if FCUSD approached neighboring districts looking for territorial alignment, they could obviously tell us to go pound salt.
They can, but again, it's a process that moves forward. So you could put a petition together saying, we want to take territory from your district and put it into ours, and it's still going to go through that process. But them not being in agreement just obviously complicates things, because in those cases, we also need data and information, et cetera, from those other districts in order to be able to complete the 9 criteria study.
So with this study, would you be studying both scenarios potentially, or could you study both scenarios where, this is the feasibility if we divide the existing school district into 2 new school districts, and this is the feasibility if the city of Rancho Cordova were taking the lead to pull in everything within their boundaries? Is that 2 separate studies? Is that something that could be done in one study?
I mean, it could be physically done in one report. It would definitely be 2 different sets of analyses for all of the criteria, because they're 2 different facts that are going into both of those.
And would that essentially probably increase the cost of, right. Okay, I figured as much. Okay, but do you get a discount? Let's see. All right, well, I from the beginning, I've made this statement many times. I like our district the way it is, but at the same time, I truly don't feel I necessarily have the right to tell folks in another city that they can't control their own destiny. And I mean, that's not right. I do sometimes have questions whether, if it was just simply splitting the district in two, whether we're putting Rancho Cordova in the best position to succeed, only having 70% of your land mass, or it might even be 65% of your land mass versus 100% of your land mass. I think perhaps in my initial analysis here is that to provide the greatest opportunity for success for Rancho Cordova, you really need all of your land, not just part of your land. And I do wonder if FCUSD is the right entity to be the lead, or whether the city of Rancho Cordova is the right entity to be the lead. But if we do move forward, obviously that's not a decision that needs to be made tonight. But I think if that is a possibility, we should at least account for that possibility in the analysis in the study, so that we don't get just the analysis of separating the district and not knowing what the analysis would look like if the city of Rancho Cordova took the lead and went for their entire boundaries.
If I could, I just wanted to, and there have been a couple of comments, and so I wanted to clarify and make sure that we're all on the same page. So what the district requested of us was a proposal to do this study so that you would have this information for, feasibility, just so that you have that data. That is separate and apart from actually submitting a petition to the county committee, who would then do, an analysis, et cetera. And so, as you noted, even if you decide to move forward, it's not as if you have to make a decision now as to who's going to be submitting it, what entity it is. What we'd need to know is, this is a scenario that we're looking at, splitting the district, or no, we want to look at a scenario where we're taking all of these, that piece of it. But there's no need for you at this point to make that determination, because you'd be getting this data, you're going to decide if and when or how you want to move forward. And then those decisions have to be made to submit an actual petition to the county committee with whoever the chief petitioner is, et cetera.
Right, yeah. No, but I was just in my mind trying to make sure that if we are going to pay for a study, that we potentially get all of the scenarios so that we have the full picture of what we're looking at. But yeah, so I'm 100% supportive of moving forward with having the study conducted as well. And actually, let me throw this question out because it does, our goal was to see if we had general consensus, and I think we have general consensus here. But I also see a value that once the study is completed, might we consider coming back in a meeting just like this and hear from you and be able to ask questions about the study, the report, and kind of debrief and kind of see where potentially there could be consensus in moving forward, not moving forward, moving in one direction, not moving in one direction. And I guess that's more of a question to the cities than it is to Ms. Garcia. Is that something that
Yeah.
Okay.
I have one quick question, Mr. Tate. I know you asked the same question. That's what I was asking also at the beginning. And I hear, what Cara was saying. So what is the Rancho's view at high level though? Because Folsom is almost 95, 98% is Folsom, except a tiny piece is on San Juan. But yours is quite a bit. Do you have thought through it? I just want to hear, that's all. Anatolia and, other entities.
In a perfect world, YK, in a perfect world, we would have the opportunity to consolidate within the city limits of Rancho Cordova. But we've heard an awful lot of roadblocks to doing that. And we've been advised in several different venues that it would be difficult to do that. So this particular first contract will at least provide a framework to help evaluate that. I do have a question about the details of the contract, and I think both you and Chris answered that or referred to it also. The fact that the contract provides for only one, number one, the contract provides for simply splitting this district into two, period. Analyze that particular concept. Then it allows for only one presentation at one meeting. And then there are other, there's a charge out rate if other presentations or other work or whatever is needed. But that's really a question for the superintendent. Is this the right resolution that you all should adopt, or should it be a little more expansive resolution?
Yeah. And that was kind of the questions I was trying to get at. Would, out of curiosity, would the cities want to potentially have the consultant come to your city council meeting separate from a joint meeting for a presentation? Because there is one single presentation in the.
Is that correct? On the feasibility study proposal.
But yes, the way the proposal is written right now is one meeting. Whether it's to the joint body, to you, that I'm open to whichever way you want to do it.
Yeah, we don't need it, okay.
No, we're good. We got some, we just need the study. And YK, to your answer, we're gonna go get the rest of our city, and we're gonna duct tape ourselves back together again. So we thought about this for generations. We've been waiting for this time, and we're finally in a good state. And remember, in 1995, it passed SCOA 6-3. So 6 didn't, and it lost in the ballot.
Yeah.
So this is already gone. We didn't actually get it. We didn't pass all of it. And Set County Board put it to the voters, and the voters weren't ready, and we as a city weren't ready yet. But now we're ready, and we're going to do everything we can to make this happen. So we definitely have weighed all our stuff, and we're ready, and we can't wait for that report. In 8 days.
Mr. President.
I heard her say 8 days. Thank you.
Just a quick question for City Council of Rancho Cordova. Have you guys approached Elk Grove at all with this idea?
So many times.
Okay, and what was their response?
Hell no.
Okay.
They were upset, but now, thanks to my amazing citizens, a couple of the board members are really interested in finding a way for Anatolia to find better pastures to
Mr. President,
migrate.
Yes.
Doesn't that beg the question of whether the first step and the test case is capturing the portions of the Elk Grove School District that are within the boundaries of Rancho Cordova, when we can work on that collectively before we go our
Mike,
theoretical separate ways?
If we didn't have several years of already having tried to do that, then it would be easy to say yes. But from practically the first moment of incorporation, we spent several years working on that. And yes, it was under different administration, but the ladies who were here earlier, the board member who actually represents that part of the school district came out and did a community meeting at one of the elementary schools. And, almost unanimously, the people who were there wanted a different arrangement, but the gentleman who represents him on the school board just kept saying how difficult it was and throwing up all the impossibilities and that kind of thing. So one of the biggest issues is the fact that Elk Grove works with a Melrose. Everybody there, everybody who lives within the Elk Grove School District, in addition to whatever Melrose they may have for having their neighborhood facilities to begin with, is also paying a separate Melrose to the Elk Grove Unified School District. And Elk Grove has a system of funding new school construction all over the city with a total pot of money. So the money that the people in the Anatolias have been paying into that Melrose, maybe going to build a school over at District 56.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's
Thought I'd
complicated.
ask.
Yeah.
That was my thinking also, but
One other
it's more
question.
complicated.
So the 8 to 10 weeks timeline, I would assume does not consider the fact that we are now in summer vacation. And while much of the staff is here, for a lot of the summer, there's also vacations to consider in that timeframe. So I would imagine seeking a study that typically takes 8 to 10 weeks, that requires extensive amount of time from staff to pull things together, is probably a longer timeline than the 8 to 10 weeks.
So to be clear, the 8 to 10 weeks is from when we get all the data that we need.
Okay.
So as soon as the district is able to provide everything we've asked for, then that clock starts.
So yes, the answer would be, it would be longer than 8 to 10 weeks. Okay.
And not days.
I just have a quick background question, just because I don't know and I didn't see it anywhere. What is our enrollment numbers in the entire school district at the moment? And then what percentage is Rancho versus Folsom approximately?
We're over 20,000 students, getting closer to 21,000 students. And the split of the district, Sean?
Third Rancho, 2/3.
Thank you.
All right. Well, again, it sounded like, or not, it appeared through the shaking of heads and a couple of responses that there would be an interest in a follow-up joint meeting once we have the study completed then. All right. So I think that is all. We were seeking guidance and consensus from the joint meeting tonight. So again, I very much appreciate this unique meeting of the City of Rancho Cordova and the City of Folsom with the Folsom Cordova Unified School District School Board. So that being said, we are finished with it.
President Reed,
Yes.
before you gavel out.
Okay.
Just so we're all clear on next steps in this process, Folsom Cordova Unified School Board is giving direction to staff to bring back the feasibility as a discussion action then at our next meeting on June 15th.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
So I just wanted that to be clear to everybody as well.
That's important.
So quick question, would that be to approve paying for the study ourselves, our district, or moving forward with the study?
The study, well, if we're pursuing the study ourselves, it would be Folsom Cordova paying for the study.
Okay, but just if we did decide to vote no, if majority was voting no, does not mean that the study could not be carried out by the city.
That's correct.
Okay.
We heard that's an option.
All right. All right, then, I guess by unanimous consent, unless there's an objection, we will adjourn. Hearing no objection, we're adjourned.